2 minutes to air, 1 minute till the start of a live stream. One minute to air. The live stream has started. This is your last verbal cue.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Durham City Hall. Welcome to your house. And we are here tonight to call this meeting to order at 7 o'clock p.m. on the 18th day of December 2023. Welcome all of you all here in person and online. If we will, please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you so much. It is our practice to stand as we have Councilmember Freeman with special guests joining us tonight for the Pledge of Allegiance. We have some Cub Scouts here. If you all would just come on down front.
Thank you. If you'd stand and salute the flag.
You guys can stand right up here and give Councilmember Freeman a hand and state in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all so much. And thank you for joining us tonight. All right. So we're going to have an active agenda tonight. And whenever we have an active agenda, there's quite a bit to organize here physically. So just give me a moment to get our papers categorized. But while I'm doing that, Madam Clerk, would you go ahead and call the roll, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor Williams.
He's here.
Mayor Pro Tem Middleton.
I'm sorry, I'm here.
Thank you. Councilmember Baker.
Here.
Councilmember Caballero.
Here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Present.
Recording in progress.
And Councilmember Rist.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, for that. I am here. At this time, I'll acknowledge my colleagues on the council for any comments. We'll start at my left. To my right. Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. I just wanted to share in a very great organization. I try to continue to keep bringing these Singing Rooster chocolates. It's a Haitian collective. They do reinvest these dollars into the social enterprise in Haiti, and I did want to share that with each of you, so you should all have one in the clerk, and I'm going to make sure that I get some more because I've undercounted, so. But I did want to just make sure I share that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the calories.
Yes, and happy holidays to everyone.
Thank you for the calories, Councilmember Freeman. It's going to be good.
You're very welcome. You can go work them off afterwards.
Councilmember Rist, Mayor Pro Tem. Yes, sir. All right. Thank you all so much. All right, at this time, we'll recognize the manager for any priority items.
Good evening, Mayor Williams, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton, and members of the Durham City Council. I have a few priority items for you this evening. Agenda item number 19, which is UDO Text Amendment Omnibus 18. 2 presentations have been added and will be presented this evening. They are attachments 6 and 7. Agenda item number 20, UDO Text Amendment Pedestrian Mall. A presentation has been added. That will be agenda item number 6. And agenda item number 21, UDO Text Amendment Conservation Subdivisions. A presentation has been added. That is attachment number 7. Agenda item number 22, fiscal year 24-25 Annual Action Plan Public Needs Hearing. A correction has been made to the title, changing it from fiscal year 2023-2024 to fiscal year 2024-2025. Those are my priority items this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Madam Attorney, do you have any, I'll acknowledge you for any priority items.
Good evening, Mayor Williams, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton, and members of the City Council. It's good to see you. The City Attorney's Office does not have any priority items tonight.
Did she say it was attached?
Thank you. And I'll recognize the clerk for any priority items.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The City Clerk's office doesn't have any priority items, but I did want to remind everyone that the Ward 3 vacancy closes for the first step or the application process this Thursday, the 21st.
Thank you so much.
But then there is a part 2.
There's a
and
part
the-
2.
The second section consists of the questionnaire, and that will open on the 21st and run through the 3rd of January.
Sounds good. So just to clarify, the application questionnaire closes on Thursday, the 21st. And I'm sorry, could you repeat it?
There are 2 steps to the application process. The first step is our general application. We are finding out who is interested. They give general information about themselves. Then the second step consists of the questionnaire. You will discuss the questionnaire tomorrow, and then it will go live on Thursday. And the questionnaire remains live from Thursday of this week through January 3rd.
Thank you. Councilmember Freeman?
Just verifying with City Manager Page, you said that the attachment was number 6 for item 20, or am I missing that? I don't see the presentation, that's all. Item 20?
Item 20 is a UDO Text Amendment Pedestrian Mall. A presentation has been added, and item 20's Just making sure that I'm correct. The presentation is item 6.
I mean, it's on the website, so. Do it again. Okay. Thank you.
Does that response? Thank you.
One moment. Yeah. All right, yeah, those organized, right? Those categorized. All right. So at this time, I will go ahead and read the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of items that the council has previously considered in a work session. All items on the consent agenda may be approved by a single vote of the council. Items may be removed from the consent agenda by a council member or a member of the public, and those items will be considered separately at the end of the meeting tonight. First item on the consent agenda is approval of council minutes. Number 2, Durham Open Space and Trails Commission. Number 3, Durham Cultural Advisory Board appointment. Number 4, Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, ACFR, for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2023. Number 5, fiscal year 2024-25 budget development schedule. And that item has been requested to be pulled. Number 6, American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA project, Be Connected Durham, Fayetteville Street Corridor Equitable Engagement Series. Number 7, Number 6 has been pulled as well. Number 7, American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, interlocal agreement with Durham County to support joint affordable housing projects. Number 8, contract with T.G. Allen and Associates, LLC, for equitable engagement on the new Unified Development Ordinance. Number 9, Second Amendment to Grant Agreement, number 18353, between Legal Aid of North Carolina and the City of Durham for eviction diversion. Number 10, Contract Amendment number 3 for fiscal year 2022 through 2026, City Services and Programs for the Downtown Durham Municipal Service District. Number 12, Contract with Central Carolina Holdings, LLC, for recycling and disposable of scrap tires. Number 13, Purchase Contract with Gillick, LLC, for electric buses for Go Durham. Number 14, fiscal year 2023-2024, 5339, Federal Flex Grant Project Ordinance. Number 15, agreement between City of Durham and City of Raleigh regarding mutual aid for drinking water supply. Number 16, contract with Doppler, Inc. for water and sewer maintenance, supplemental dispatch, and customer notification services. General business agenda. Number 11, contract amendment for the ShotSpotter Respond Services Agreement. GBA public hearings. 17, Consolidated Annexation, Page Road, Greenwood. Number 18, zoning map change, 3317 and 3325, Rose of Sharon Road. Number 19, UDO Text Amendment, Omnibus 18. Number 20, UDO Text Amendment, Pedestrian Mall. Number 21, UDO Text Amendment, Conservation Subdivisions. And 22, fiscal year 2023-2024, Annual Action Plan Public Needs Hearing. Those are items on the consent agenda, with the exception of 5 and 6. And I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of those items.
So move.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Madam Clerk, please open the vote. Please close the vote.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk and colleagues. So at this point, we will address our general business agenda items, and I believe our first one is number 11.
You have 15 cards.
All right, Madam Clerk, we have 3 speakers signed up online, and we have 15 in person. And we're going to start with the members online first. I would like to, as we're going into this, I would like to ensure that we are giving space for comment and that everyone's voices are heard. I've had a lot of conversations in the community in general, and I know that there are a lot of topics at hand that we'd like to discuss. I would ask our public, our colleague, our community members to please make sure that our comments are pertaining to the subject matter at hand. And we'll give each person 3 minutes. Also, there was some confusion with some folks that were signing up. General public comment will be for if it's just a matter that that's not on the agenda. We entertain those community member concerns during citizen matters during the work session, which will this week be on tomorrow as we're getting close to the holidays. So whenever we have, and I know it's a little confusing, but whenever we have a general body meeting, the item in which you speak to must be an item that was pulled or that was on the actual agenda, which you can pull. If it's a general item that is not on the agenda, then that will be a matter that you speak on at work session. You must sign up, and today I was a little flexible about it because I want to make sure that we can hear everyone's voices tonight. But I will be incorporating the procedures in which the council have before them, and we are going to project it out so everyone can see it. But when you're signing up to speak, just make sure that we're signing up online. Could you clarify me on those time frames, Madam Clerk?
We allow people to sign up virtually to speak, and there's a deadline for council meeting days of 2 p.m. Work session days, there's a deadline of 10 a.m. for the Zoom registrants.
Okay.
For in-person speakers, the deadline for tonight was 7 p.m., that we will take cards. The clerks here take cards until 7 p.m. on items. And then at the work session, we will take cards until 1 p.m. So tomorrow, we have a different day for our work session. Typically, it's Thursday. But tomorrow's Tuesday because of the holiday, like you said. So tomorrow at 1 p.m. is the deadline for public comment speakers.
Sounds good. So we'll just project that out so everyone can know and make sure we are able to hear. We'll sign up, we'll follow the process, and make sure that we can operate within those spaces. All right? Sounds good. So for item number 11, we have 1 person signed up to speak on that item, and that is Ms. Jacqueline Wagstaff. Ms. Wagstaff, can you hear me?
Okay.
Ms.
Hello?
Wagstaff, can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay, you have 3 minutes.
I don't need 3 minutes. I wanted to speak on this item, but I wanted to hear other people, but I had some questions, I had some comments, but I'm gonna save them. All I'm gonna say is I'm standing with the Durham Beyond Policing on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we have quite a few folks to speak on this item. Javier, do you want to speak first or afterward?
Mr. Mayor, it's whichever.
I will, what I'll do is I'll start with you because you pulled the item, and we'll get those questions, and then we can entertain. If you want to close out comments, I'll come back to you.
Yeah, I mean, some of my things are going to be questions for staff, so maybe we want to wait until after public comments. Thank you.
Yep. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and entertain, no, we need to go to staff first, right? Yeah. I'll go ahead and, staff, are we here for item number 11?
Yes, staff is here.
Okay. Councilmember Caballero, I'll start with you.
Thank you. I had a quick question, which was, good evening. Do you, usually folks introduce themselves so just I want to give you that opportunity.
Sorry, I thought you were going to ask the question first. My apologies. Jason Sheese, Analytical Services Manager for the Police Department.
Thank you.
Good evening. Sean Huey, Fiscal Services Manager for the Police Department.
Thank you. Good evening. My understanding was that the contract ended officially on Friday? Or is it, when does the contract actually end?
The 14th was the last day of the one-year pilot period.
Okay, so over the weekend, was ShotSpotter on or off?
It was on.
It was on. This morning when I went to look at the data, maybe there's just a lag, but none of the data was reporting over the weekend, and I checked around, it was 11:30 or noon today.
Correct. Staff does have to do some work in order to bring that data in, and they would not have been doing that over the weekend.
That makes sense.
Yes, ma'am, it was active and working.
Okay, so if the contract ended on the 14th, which is Friday, how is it getting paid?
It's not subject to your vote tonight. The company Sound Thinking agreed to keep the services in place during that interim period between the 14th and tonight.
So then it would be like prorated back to whatever the use was?
The full extension would be through March the 14th. So the cost that you see in your memo would be for the full 3-month extension period.
I guess what I'm saying is if the contract fails to pass, then we would prorate the weekend. I'm just trying to understand how this is working.
No, ma'am, there would no
just be
additional fees would be due
Okay.
to Sound Thinking for the weekend.
Thank you. Additionally, so if we have questions around what we're seeing on the dashboard, the time to really ask those questions would be when we have the full 12 months, when we've given the Wilson Center time, excuse me, to do that full 12-month analysis.
Yes, ma'am, and that's what we're asking is to extend the contract by 3 months so that the Wilson Center does have the ability to complete their external evaluation of the full 1-year pilot period.
But they have 12 months of data already, correct?
There has been 12 months that have been completed of the system. However, it does take time in order to collect that data fully, provide that data to the Wilson Center, allow them to work through it, complete their report, their analysis. So there is some lag between when the data collection ends and when it's made available to them for analysis.
No, I understand that part. I guess what I'm saying is the 12 months of data that they're they have the full 12. They may not have it yet, but the time allotted for it has been collected.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry if I did not understand.
No, it's okay. I
your
wasn't
question.
being particularly clear, so that's on me. So it was on this weekend. The contract officially ended on Friday. And thank you. That's it.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Councilmember Caballero. All right, what I'll do is I'll call a few names at once. We'll just start to queue down. The first name I have is Dante Strabino, followed by Willie Brown, George Bako, Victor Ukisa, and Nicole Draplak. And just, if you're here, please come over to the podium. To my right, your left, facing the dais. And as you were speaking, please repeat your name, because I think I may have butchered some of that. You can state your name, pronouncing it appropriately for the record. Dante Strabino, are you here? All right. Willie Brown, good to see you.
First of all, how y'all doing, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Y'all got some more time to serve this great city. That's beautiful. The Shots Fired program is a beautiful program in some places, but it has to be in the right locations. Just can't be everywhere. Today, I was on Palmer Street and Chapel Hill Road, and y'all have 2 shots fired at various locations on Chapel Hill Road. I left work today to get ready to go to City Council. I went to one of my Lodge brothers' house. That's where I was going. And this happened to me today. As soon as I got out the car, locked my car, get to walk in the store, pow! Today, you can check on it. If I'm a liar, the police gonna have to know, because when I was pulling out the parking lot very fast, he was coming this way, chilling. He didn't hear it. The shots fired didn't hear it. So, I mean, but shots was fired. I'm just gonna let you know that. And then he pulled into the store. I guess he got a call. Because I stopped down the road. I was hoping he followed me, because I was gonna tell him, hey, shots was fired or whatever. I'm just being real with you. Because I wasn't gonna wait around to see what happened. Because I've been a victim of a gunshot. I know how it feels. I'm from the city of Charlotte. I know how it feels. Stray bullet, not even intended for me. At the same time, when we find time to fund these programs, you have to find time to fund us too, as city workers. Because we out there at it, out there in it. That's just real. We don't have the best equipment, we don't have the best anything, we don't have the best of safety. We don't have a lot of things, man. But we go out there every day in these same communities. Half these police don't even want to ride down the street in. And we have to work in those conditions. We do. We really, really do. I'm in Dearborn like I live there. You know, not that Dearborn's a bad community, but I'm just telling you, I'm in those trenches. I'm at the village like I live there. I'm in those trenches. Those same sewers and things are full of beer cans, bottles, and whatnot, fake guns and real ones. I'm in the trenches. So when you decide to fund these programs, I want you to decide to fund us workers too. Because we are the people that's out there in the trenches, man. Police ride through. We in the trenches. And the worst part about it is I was raised in the trenches. I ain't even scared of the trenches. I was born in 2300 Haynes Street on Commons Avenue, the worst place in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I made it out alive, not unscathed. And I feel bad that I'm not afraid to be in those conditions. I serve in them every day, and I'm proud to say I do, because somebody got to do it. But I feel like we should all get paid to do what we do, not just because we're in the trenches. The Shots Fired program, you know, I'm not for or against it, to be honest with you. I think everything is good in proper measures, in proper places. Thank you.
Thank you so much, man. George Biko, you in the chambers? Victor. And please state your name for the record.
My name is Victor Urquiza.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Victor. I work as a workers' rights organizer with Unite for a Fair Economy, and I'm a member of the Party for Socialism and Liberation. I came to speak today to ask that the Durham City Council stop the funding of the ShotSpotter program that targets working-class Black and brown communities. The ShotSpotter technology sets a dangerous precedent for communities of color. The net effect is an increase in surveillance without tangible results in terms of reducing gun violence. In fact, police are sent out on numerous false alarms, and the likelihood of unwarranted police aggression goes up because of ShotSpotter. Instead of pouring so much money into ineffective surveillance schemes, the city needs to implement a $25 minimum wage for city workers, invest in communities of color, and build with the residents rather than forcing them out because of gentrification. Housing and livability should be prioritized for all residents of Durham, not just for the wealthy. It is a disgrace that city workers who keep our city running cannot afford to live in it. Lastly, the City Council must stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people who are facing genocide as we speak and pass the ceasefire resolution presented by UE 150. Since October 7th, over 20,000 Palestinians have been murdered by the Israeli state. Thousands more are still missing underneath the rubble. More than 1 million have been displaced and are suffering severe shortages of food, water, and fuel. For over 3 months, the world has watched the collective punishment of innocent Palestinians as
Victor.
Israel has dropped a shocking number of explosives on the Gaza Strip,
Victor.
murdering whole neighborhoods.
I'm so sorry. It must stay pertaining to the actual subject.
All these issues are interconnected, so if I have my 1 minute and 30 seconds.
It has
talk
to
about
be
the
pertaining to ShotSpotter.
Well, this city council needs to call a ceasefire resolution. So, respectfully,
The ceasefire resolution, I understand. Trust me, I understand. But I want to make sure it stays to ShotSpotter. Okay? It has to be pertaining to ShotSpotter.
All right, well.
Thank you.
Ceasefire now.
Nicole, Draplek.
Yes, I'm Nicole Drapluk.
Thank you.
I am a behavioral health coworker and a member of the Party for Socialism and Liberation as well. I am here to urge City Council members to fund worker and community needs, not surveillance of Black and brown communities, and to sign on to UE 150 ceasefire resolution. ShotSpotter has failed to solve or reduce crime in our city and indiscriminately targets communities of color. Study after study reveals funding education, youth programs, housing, and employment is what prevents most crime, not police surveillance. ShotSpotter has proven to be a waste of taxpayer dollars and would be better spent funding the needs of our community. A few months ago, Durham City sanitation workers embarked on their historic struggle to demand a $5,000 bonus, higher wages, and better working conditions. Council members stated that there could be no alterations to this year's budget and would have to readdress this at a later time for the 2024 budget. Well, here we are again, not forgetting the words and promises you all made. We're here to demand that all city workers receive a bare minimum wage of $25 an hour. We have seen what happens when the work of the city sanitation department goes undone. Some council members have declared this as a public health emergency, paying the workers who keep our city a clean and livable place to live, a wage that allows them to not only live in the city that they serve, but to thrive, is the absolute least that we can do. And today we see a different type of health crisis. We see.
I'm so sorry. It must be pertaining to ShotSpotter. And when you're making a budget determination from the funds spent on ShotSpotter toward something else, I get it. But when you start to advocate in policy decisions for something totally separate, I do have to stop you.
Sign on to a ceasefire resolution. Don't fund ShotSpotter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I am a former teacher, and one of the rudest things to do is have to interrupt someone. So I want to say this in general. Your talking points must be pertaining to the subject matter at hand. It's so rude when I have to actually interrupt you, and I don't want to do that. So I'm asking you respectfully, please make sure that your comments are pertaining to the matter at which you signed up to speak on. Thank you. Next up, we have Leslie St. Dre. We have Maya Ganem. We have Nadine Burr. Manju Rajadre, and Manju, I'm so sorry, I just screwed that up, and Stella Adams. Okay, Leslie? Yep. All right, you have 3 minutes.
Hello, everyone. I'm Leslie St. Dre. I'm a Durham resident, a queer and trans parent, here with Mothers for Ceasefire, Durham Beyond Policing, and I'm an organizer with the Eno River Tenants Association. Our liberation is bound to one another in all of these struggles. Workers need livable wages, at least $25 an hour, bare minimum in my opinion, and affordable housing, not more attacks on Black and brown people. We need you to all reject the expansion of ShotSpotter, which has led to wrongful convictions and police murders of residents across the country, including youth. Fully fund and staff the HEART program and stand with us against Israel's bombardment of Gaza by passing the permanent ceasefire resolution that UE 150 sent to you. The U.S. stands alone as the only country in the UN to block the ceasefire, so we are all responsible for the genocide right now. And in your place of leverage, we need you
Leslie.
to sign a resolution,
Leslie,
pressure our congressperson and the White House.
thank you for your comments.
Lastly, in summary, defund ShotSpotter, raise the wages for city workers, fully fund and staff the HARP program, pass the ceasefire resolution,
Thank you for your
free
comments.
Palestine.
Maya, and could you state your first and last name so I can make sure I'm pronouncing it respectfully?
Maya Ghanem.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Maya. I'm a Durham resident, and I urge the City Council to stop additional ShotSpotter funding, item 11 on the agenda. But I also ask why these other issues that we're bringing up are not on the agenda. They should be. There's literally an emergency. Why are they not on the agenda? All of these issues are interconnected, and so I'm just going to say we need to support the UE 150 budget, raise city worker wages to $25 per hour, expand the HARP program, and call for a permanent ceasefire in Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you. Nadine Burr.
Good evening. My name is Nadine Burr. I'm with Mothers for Ceasefire and Jewish Voice for Peace. I am here today to speak in opposition of ShotSpotter. ShotSpotter is ineffective on gun violence, but what is effective in stopping violence is using money in a way to match our values. Our values should lead us to invest in Durham and invest in our workers and our housing, invest in mental health, and not ShotSpotter. I have seen violence. I have seen tanks. I have seen tear gas. I have been held at militarized, over-surveilled checkpoints, and Durham should say no to violence. Here in Durham, saying no to gun violence by investing in our people, especially our workers, and saying no to funding genocide. Let's support Black and brown people in Durham. Let's support working class people in Durham. Let's not surveil them. Let's stop ShotSpotter, and let's stop our tax dollars from killing brown people in Palestine. Thank you.
My name is Manju. My name is Manju Rajendran. I am here to speak on ShotSpotter. We already know what works to end gun violence. We know it's about meeting human needs, investing in quality public education, housing and healthcare, expanding job opportunity, paying all city workers and county workers living wages, shared prosperity, worker justice, job skills, wellness, therapeutic care, strengthening hope. This is what we heard in the last 36 months of listening through the Durham Safety and Wellness Task Force. For years, I've been part of community members showing up and begging that the ShotSpotter pilot not be given an opportunity, but ShotSpotter got its 3-mile pilot at the cost of $797,000, a placeholder of $1 million public dollars, and now they're asking for an extension of this test. I don't think there's a reason why we need to go beyond this 1-year mark. ShotSpotter gunshot surveillance has been sold to Black and brown community members as a false solution to the gun violence and heartbreak that's hurting our communities. And I understand that we are not to connect the dots between the ways that social spending has been gutted to pay for war, to pay for militarism, to pay for ShotSpotter. But I think there are dots to connect here around policing, incarceration, and the fact that workers have been coming year after year and begging to be paid wages that would allow them to live in this city. And so thank you so much to all of my fellow community members who've shown up to connect the dots, whether or not our city council is willing to do so today.
Thank you for your comments. Ms. Stella Adams, you have 3 minutes.
Stella Adams, 4128 Cobblestone Place, Durham. Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of the City Council, I'm speaking in opposition to the extension of the ShotSpotter contract for 3 months. I am confused about why we need an extension to evaluate the effectiveness of a program that was in fact a pilot program to determine its effectiveness. Does this extension mean that the company that operates ShotSpotter will be doing the evaluation? Does this mean that there's an RFP that will be drafted? What are the research questions? Who's in charge of the evaluation criteria? If you have a separate contractor who's already doing that, then why isn't the program providing the data we've already paid for? It does not make sense to extend the contract for ShotSpotter. It does make sense to provide a contract for the evaluation. If the evaluators, who are supposed to be independent, require 3 months of funding, that makes sense. There's no reason at all, period, end of it, to extend ShotSpotter. Is that data going to be included? Why do they need 3 additional months and $50,000 of my dollars? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Adams. Next, I have Nandi Smith, Danielle Perfor, Blue Miller, Leah Whitehead, and Liv Lynn. When you get to the Nandi, is Nandi here? Yeah, I'm right here. Oh, there you go. Good to see you. You too.
Southern Pride.
There we go.
Southern High School. All right. Hello, my name is Nandi Smith. I've been a resident of Durham since going to high school here at Southern High School and Hillside High School. I'm here today to speak in opposition of the continuation of the ShotSpotter contract. I want to reference the shooting in Wetlands Village in January. It was incredibly tragic and painful for our community, yet it went undetected by ShotSpotter because it was a drive-by shooting. Mark Anthony Middleton said the reason for this was the sensors were not set up in a way to capture the gunfire from enclosed spaces, buildings, or cars. And I want to know how many shootings inside homes or vehicles are missed. How do we contend with the crisis that people like Michael Williams, who was wrongfully imprisoned based on information from ShotSpotter, even though it was inside a vehicle and the technology had known flaws around gunshot detection accuracy inside vehicles? I think about Adam Toledo in Chicago, where the inaccurate technology led police to killing and slaying this young man, this young teenager. And taking a breath, thinking about his life and the life of other young people who don't deserve to continue to be over-policed and surveilled in the city. Thinking about how we're investing into the futures of those young people. In a 2018 article published by the Journal of Experimental Criminology performed a partially randomized field experiment on the effect of an acoustic gunshot detective system on police incident reports, and it found after implementing the detection system, it reported gunshot incidents. It increased by about 200%, but there was no significant increase in the number of confirmed shootings. So they increased spending on response to calls, but they didn't do a better job of detecting gunfire incidents. What amount of failure is our council and city willing to tolerate? The limits of ShotSpotter revealed that police will still rely largely on community members to report gunshots, as we heard from other speakers, yet the community does not trust law enforcement to report these. Why would we spend resources on limited technology rather than invest in resources that alleviate gun violence and trauma, like food, health care, emotional and mental health support, housing security, fun and affordable after-school summer programs for kids? Yeah, I want to note that ShotSpotter rebranded itself as Sound Thinking, and I think if folks think about that for a second, you think about, oh, this thing actually isn't detecting shots. It wants us to think about, I think, some of the ways that, it wants us to think about some of the ways that it can detect all these things that aren't gunshots. And it also did that so you won't be looking up its name of all the ways that many other cities, including Charlotte, decided to not continue the contract because it was a waste of money. ShotSpotter costs $60,000 to $95,000 per square mile. What would it mean if we invested that money into communities, invested that money in all the things in the Community Safety and Wellness Task Force report? That was a deep community engagement process that already listened to all of what our community.
Thank you, Nandi.
That was not this. Thank you.
Thank you. Danielle?
Good evening. My name is Danielle.
I'm sorry, Danielle, 1 second. And you're doing it perfectly. I was just going to say, make sure when you all are speaking, you're not too close to the mic. We want to make sure that folks online can hear as well.
Good evening.
And I'm sorry, if you feel comfortable removing your mask so it can come through clearly.
Good? Okay.
Now go.
Good evening. My name is Danielle Purifoy. I have been a resident of Durham for 33 years, raised in the public schools here, and I'm also a long-term member of Durham Beyond Policing and a geography professor at UNC Chapel Hill. I echo everything that's been said already, and I want to just reiterate quickly, right, the core issues here. We need to stop spending our money on technology like ShotSpotter. We need to stop listening to these companies that are trying to sell us safety and listen to our actual residents who have been saying for years, right, that we need actual community investments instead of false solutions around gun violence. And I want to, and I actually won't be before you long. We, you know, as part of, I'm like a broken record. This is maybe my first time coming in person after COVID, but I've said over and over and over again that we need investments in community, right? Like how many times do we have to say it? And nevertheless, right, like this community has for years rejected ShotSpotter. It was shoved in our faces year after year after year after year. And we said no every year, right? And I guess, you know, folks got worn down on the council or something because why? But I want to also just make a connection here, right? Like, because we've talked about, you know, connecting dots. I think Manju did a really beautiful job, right, of connecting what's going on in Palestine right now to our city. And it's not even just about our dollars, right? Like this city is the first city in the country to stop collaborating with Israel, right? And we can't pass a resolution to end genocide? Like, y'all, that was so much more brave, what we did some years ago, than what we're asking you to do right now, right? This is all about our dollars, right? And we're investing, like, and what do we look like, for real, right? Like, not passing a resolution to end genocide, funding ShotSpotter while being the first city in the country to stop our police collaborating with Israel. That's what I'm asking y'all, for real. We can do better. $25 minimum wage for our workers, minimum. They can get a lot more than that because the rent is too high.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Blue Miller? Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Hello, my name is Blue. I'm a resident of Durham, and I am also a volunteer and voter for some of y'all who I'm excited to see up here. So I'm really excited for y'all to be here, and I trust that y'all will make the right decision for Durham, ShotSpotter, and a ceasefire. ShotSpotter's use in Chicago has shown no decrease in gun violence and instead a waste of city resources and an increase in police surveillance and violence, especially among Black and brown communities. Meanwhile, we have HEART. I'm so grateful for your work that is past HEART and all the work they have done to already make our city safer in the past year and a half alone. We in Durham, when it comes to ShotSpotter, are in a privileged position. We don't need to experiment to find out that ShotSpotter doesn't make our community safer. We already tried. Chicago already tried. Plenty of data already shows its failed efficacy in other cities around the U.S. And they say that hindsight is 20/20, and we already have it. I ask that instead of investing in deficient and dangerous surveillance technology, we invest the resources that we know make our communities safer, such as education, HEART, fair wages, affordable housing, recreation, public transit, and health services. I ask that we invest in public safety rather than police violence, surveillance, and genocide. Imagine investing $65,000 to $90,000 per square mile per year, plus a $10,000 initiation fee that ShotSpotter would cost us to benefit East Durham residents, not to make the ShotSpotter Corporation more rich, because I don't think they have us in mind. If we claim to be so invested in decreasing gun violence, we must defund ShotSpotter and sign on to the UE 150 permanent ceasefire resolution and end the genocide in Gaza. Thank you. Free Palestine.
Leah?
Hi, yes, good evening.
Good evening, welcome.
Thank you. Honestly, up here, I don't have that much to add to what everyone else has said. Honestly, I'm just really frustrated because we are not that big of a town. We don't have money like this to be throwing it around. It's just not our job to spend time or money to prove to anyone that ShotSpotter works. I'm feeling frustrated because contracts like ShotSpotter lose sight of the purpose of our emergency response system, which is to keep us safe. Instead, I've been a homelessness services provider since 2018. I've been on the streets. I know that lives are at stake, and I've already been to too many funerals. But we have to redirect from unproven reactive surveillance systems to evidence-based creative solutions like the HEART program that we know our community wants desperately to be fully funded. Safety means preventing violent crises from happening in the first place, not just responding once they already happen. We want HEART funded. We need to make sure that all workers can live and thrive in Durham, including raising the minimum wage to $25 for all city workers. And we need to stand in solidarity with other communities facing violence by calling for passing a permanent resolution for a ceasefire and sending no aid to Israel. Thank you. Free Palestine.
Thank you. And I want to make sure I pronounce this right. Liv Lynn. Okay, good.
That's me. Thanks, y'all. My name is Liv Lynn. I'm a resident of Durham, and I'm here today to ask you to stop funding the failed experiment of ShotSpotter, stand against sending our tax dollars to fund war in Israel, and dedicate our limited resources instead to meeting the real needs of workers who keep our city running. I'm here with questions about ShotSpotter that I would hope you and the Durham Police Department could already answer after this year-long pilot program. Has ShotSpotter decreased evictions in Durham? Has ShotSpotter helped Durham residents get mental health support? Has it paid city workers what they need to stay living in the city they work for? Has it even decreased gun violence in Durham? You know by looking at me that ShotSpotter is not in my neighborhood. That's because my neighborhood has private money that our neighbors are using to fill the gaps in Durham's city budget. My neighbors are paying to keep their own kids safe, housed, and well. It is our collective responsibility to do this for all children in Durham. We have brought extensive research on just how ineffective and harmful ShotSpotter is that I will share with the city clerk. And Durham already has extensive research on what we know is already working, the HEART program. We hear what Durham city workers need, $25 an hour. Please redirect our money from ShotSpotter surveillance technology to meeting our material needs in ways that we know work. And there is one other thing that I need to feel safe in Durham. As a Jewish Durham resident, please hear me when I say it is less safe for me to practice my faith in a city with no moral clarity on genocide. Life is as sacred in Palestine as it is here in Durham. Please use our money to fund life and safety in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody for their comments, really. And at this time, those are the cards I have. I'm going to bring this matter back before the council for any colleagues that may have comments. All right. Pro Tem? One moment. Please, let's make sure that we are providing space for us to have this dialogue. And we want to be respectful as possible, so I'm going to ask you nicely, please don't start yelling from the floor, right? We want to be able to have a conversation.
Thank you, Your Honor, and thank you, colleagues. I want to thank everyone who came out tonight, both online or in the chamber this evening, to talk about this very serious subject and to talk about our values as a city, because this really does come down to our values as a city, as neighbors, as fellow residents. A lot's been said tonight, and much of it, what's been said, was said at the beginning, before we even tried the pilot. A lot of the arguments have not changed on either side. What has changed is we actually have data, and we actually have results, respectfully, not from Chicago, but for Durham. And I want to talk just very transparently and openly about the data we have in Durham. One of our friends said something about the community doesn't want this, and the community's been saying they don't want it. Friends, that's just not true. And I know that in this room, it's very easy to fill this room, but there are 300,000 people in this city, and there are thousands of people in this city that live in housing complexes around this city who do talk to us, but don't have listservs and don't come to meetings. And I recognize a lot of the same faces from the beginning of this process, and you recognize my face. I think it's important that us who are organizers and professional activists and elected officials at this point step back and let the folk who actually live in some of these neighborhoods speak. And we're going to keep this respectful, because many of the things that you said you were concerned about ShotSpotter, we made a promise to you that we would look out for those things and that we would measure for those things. And we did, and we kept faith with that. So I want to keep faith with you tonight in the spirit of that debate to what we said to you at the beginning. In 2021, an election was held in this city, and all of the people that supported ShotSpotter said they supported ShotSpotter, and the folk who didn't said they didn't. And the city elected the folk who said they wanted to try it. So respectfully, friends, to say that the community hasn't spoken on this issue just simply isn't true. Tonight, there are people in their homes watching this meeting who have family members sitting next to them who survived a gunshot wound because we got to them while they were bleeding out and no one called 911. I speak to them every week. And the reason why we got to them is because ShotSpotter alerted us. 70% of the incidents that ShotSpotter reported to us, hear me, and check the dashboard, because we got to ground this in facts. Over 70% of the incidents ShotSpotter reported had no corresponding 911 call. There are thousands of people who live in our city who have resigned themselves to the proposition that nightly gunfire is just the way it is. Thousands of, I grew up in a neighborhood like that, where we heard gunfire every night, and we just became desensitized to it. And then we get up in the morning and there's a body in the park that bled out because nobody came. Because nobody came. So I want to respectfully say that we can't now unknow what we know. And here's what we know. When those sensors went hot, we picked up almost 4,000 incidents of gunfire in our city. So now we can't pretend we don't know that. Even if we turn the sensors off, we can't now pretend that we don't know that there are people living like that in our city. We know that we have gotten to victims who were bleeding out and no one called 911, they're alive. We can't unknow that. We have found shell casings that have led to arrest of repeat shooters in our city. We know that. We can't unknow that. We have collected weapons because of this technology. We can now not unknow that. So even if we turn the sensors off, does that relieve us of our moral obligation of what we now know? Do we get to pretend that folk aren't living that way? And listen, I hear you when you say about root causes and investing in things that lead away from gunfire. I'm glad to hear that, because ShotSpotter is not all that I talked about. When I first talked about guaranteed income, I was laughed at. And to be quite honest, a lot of the organizations that are here tonight, I didn't see y'all rushing to rally around that type of thing years ago. Just say no to police and no to ShotSpotter. Where was the program of investment? Marshall Plan has been passed. When I first talked about an investment in our Hayti corridor and disinvested black communities, it was laughed at. That's now also part of the budget. So, you know, when we talk about the expansion of violence interrupters, that was me who made that recommendation at first. I know this is the shiny object that gets all the attention, but we have always talked about a comprehensive approach. Respectfully, friends, to say that ShotSpotter has not worked in Durham is simply not true. Now, we can turn it off, but we can't unknow and pretend that we don't know what we now know. The ShotSpotter pilot costs less than what we pay our city's top executive. You want to tell the people in Wellens Village and McDougal Terrace, who I speak to all the time, and I'm looking for faces who live there, that their kids jumping in bathtubs at night aren't worth a couple $100,000 or $50,000? I have sat here and I voted for $1 million worth of bike lanes, protected bike lanes. I never told any of those folk go get a car. I have voted for millions of dollars in the HEART program. Piece of trivia. I was actually the first elected official in the city to call for the deployment of unarmed mental health responders. Been talking about that for years. But here's the deal. The Durham Police Department, we've had some tragic moments in Durham, but the Durham Police Department is not on the news every month for killing folk in mental health distress. But you know what? So what? It's a good idea to have the tool to send mental health workers. It doesn't matter to me if we can prove whether or not that more people have been kept alive. It's the right thing to do. And finally, if you think that sending help to people when they need help in our streets, whether anybody called 911 or not, is a bad idea, I don't know how to respond to that. But my hope and prayer.
Sorry, one moment, please.
My hope and prayer is that none of us or none of our family members find themselves in a position where they suffer some type of violence, and we had the wherewithal to get to them, whether anybody called 911 or not. I pray that none of us are visited by that fate. But tonight in this city, there are people who have written to us, who have called us, who have said to us, we are very thankful that you spent less than what you pay your top executive to send help when help is needed. I think we should continue it.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, excuse me. We have gone through quite a bit of this for a good bit of time. Voices will be heard.
If it's not about the money, pay them more. If it's not about a couple $100,000, 25 an hour minimum.
Excuse me, order. We're not going to do that. We are not going to do that. We are not going to do that. Please have a seat or be removed from the chamber. I'm so sorry. Thank you. Councilmember Caballero.
Thank you. I want to speak about ShotSpotter in just a second, but I really want to, this is where we're at. We've spent 2 years not following our own procedures on how we engage in this chamber. And on December 4th, there was a change. And so I will promise to you all to always listen and be respectful, but I also am asking that in return. I will also not spend a lot of time talking, because that's just not my style. I think most folks know that. I put this on GBA, General Business Agenda. That is the mechanism that we do. For the folks who are like, why can't we speak about these things? We are voting on the items on our agenda. Most of them are contracts. That's what is before us in this case. It is a contract, yay or nay. If you pull it, that's what makes it not on consent. Public can pull it, we can pull it. I did that with the intent of voting no. I will be voting no. I think many of you raised many concerns that I've always consistently had around ShotSpotter. I do want to answer a couple things that came up during comment. There is a third party. It is the Wilson Center for Science and Justice at Duke Law. That is who's doing the analysis. It is a third party analysis. They have the 12-month data. They are providing that third party analysis for us. And my concern with continuing the contract is that it, to me, is like a slippery slope. If in 3 months it's not ready, then do we renew again? And so then we've extended it beyond what we communicated to the public would be the pilot. I will also own that I'm not comfortable with the fact that we haven't communicated to the public very broadly that ShotSpotter is getting turned off. And that is a miss on our part. It was one of the reasons I was on the fence about whether I was voting yes or no. It was not whether I think ShotSpotter is a good idea or bad. I really want to see that analysis that's done in Durham, which has been done differently. I think ultimately what we're going to get to is inconclusive, right? I think somebody's life may have been saved, yes, but what other resources could we have allocated along the way that would have saved that person's life? And that's the question that's before us. The question before us with collective money is that we have to use every dollar as thoughtfully as we can. And what is important to me in general is that I will own that this is not where I was as a council member when I was first elected or initially appointed. Sometimes that is, you call 911, you do need a police response, right? Which is why you consistently hear me say, I want the right response to 911. It is often not. And what we do consistently need to do, and what we do actually hear from our community, is what are we doing with our youth? How are we occupying their time? And when we are choosing a reaction instead of more money to Parks and Rec, ensuring that we can keep our rec centers open, we're making a choice. We have limited resources. And so that is my intent, and I will consistently try as best as I can with limited resources to think those things through and really allocate as many resources as we can, which is one of the reasons I'm also a big proponent of HEART. It is around that prevention. It is around how do we have a broader conversation on community safety and how do we do the best that we can in Durham. I do want to address my colleague for one comment that was made. No one on this dais ever laughed at either basic income, universal basic income, or your HATI. Both of those were passed unanimously by your colleagues. So there's never been any, and I apologize to you if you ever thought that I was not a proponent of it, because if I wasn't a proponent, I wouldn't have voted for it. So I hope that you did not feel that from your colleagues at the time. Those are my comments for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Caballero. Are they, Councilmember Bacon? I'm so sorry. Baker.
So tonight we're given the task of deciding whether to provide a three-month contract extension to ShotSpotter. In making a decision, I have reached out to community members proactively, and I've also reached out to rank and file emergency services workers to get their opinions, and the reason is because we have not been provided, as Councilmember Caballero pointed out, that independent third-party Wilson Center study yet. So in considering how to vote on the contract extension, I did reach out to those folks to try and get the best information that I possibly could and approach this objectively. I do think that there are strong arguments, both for and against ShotSpotter. I think some of them have already been pointed out. Some of the concerns, initial concerns when ShotSpotter first came out over surveillance are no longer major concerns, according to the ACLU and others. They're not listening in on folks. Regarding over-policing, a lot of that depends significantly upon the actual police department. So a police department that is abusive, that's given a new tool, will use that tool in an abusive way. A police department that is less abusive, such as the Durham Police Department, which isn't perfect, but does not have a police union, will not use that tool in the same way. So policing tools, for example, in the hands of Chicago PD will be abused. Also accuracy, false positive, false negatives, that remains a downside, although the technology is improving. Where I remain skeptical is the trade-off costs, the public costs. I would also point out the public costs exceed the costs of just the contract amount. It's also associated with going out to locations. And that is why other city police departments in North Carolina and elsewhere have stopped their use of ShotSpotter for that reason. So I approach this vote objectively. I do think that there are some valid arguments for ShotSpotter. However, I'm a no vote this evening, and I look forward to the Wilson Center assessment that we'll be receiving in 3 months. Thank you.
Councilmember Riss.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, residents of Durham who've come tonight. I really appreciate your coming out, and those online as well. This is a serious topic for the city of Durham, and I deeply appreciate your comments. I am new on the council, but I am not new to the ShotSpotter debate. ShotSpotter was a frequent topic on the campaign trail, both in community forums as well as on questionnaires, multiple questionnaires that we received from different groups in the community. I was clear all along that I would withhold judgment on ShotSpotter until the complete evaluation had been completed by the Wilson Center. And so at this time, I'd like to prioritize that full impact evaluation. And right now, I will not support the extension of ShotSpotter for 3 months.
Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. I can just keep it very brief and just note that initially my support for ShotSpotter was very reluctant, and that I acknowledged that my community was split in support of it. I will say that I think I've fallen aside of understanding like the 12-month pilot has been done and we do need the evaluated data. It is troubling to think that there are some of us on council who believe that the data is already proven that it should be in use. And so I do want to make sure that that's not the message that is sent, and so I will not be supporting this.
Thank you. And I, too, approach this objectively. And where I usually stand on, something like this, I look at it, from multiple perspectives. And I look at it from multiple perspectives. And, I can't make a decision based on how many people I'm going to make happy and how many people I'm going to make upset. And what I said to some of my colleagues on council, I said, please vote your conscience in what's going to help you sleep at night. And because that's what I'll always do as well. There may be a loud room that's going to be upset with you. There may be a loud room that's happy with you. And that changes based on the issue. So this council, I hope that people will be able to just give their all in these subject matters. And, you can clap or you can boo, no matter who it is, but just know that at the end of the day, folks are they're just doing the work for you and they're making the best decision they can. This program, this pilot, came about, we have to have 12 months of it. We're looking at how we initially was proposed to incorporate this program in Durham, and it was a no to all of us, and we changed the way this company was going to be providing their pilot in Durham. We changed the way this company operates because of how we expected it to be on the streets in Durham. I will say that, I hear a lot of the commentary around why not, and I actually agree with a lot of it. I've said the same thing. We do need more food security programs. We do need better health care. We do need after-school programs. Our kids are too bored. Our kids are too bored in this city. We have to have more of a robust recreational program across the entire city. We need citywide youth initiatives. We have to invest in our kids, but there's no such thing as doing this or that. You have to be able. This is a whole city, and do know that there are a lot of folks in here saying one thing tonight, and then there are folks that come, they'll email or they'll see you on the street or the grocery store, and I think about. There is data that I'm waiting to receive on this so that I can make a full informed decision, but I think about the folks that said, I actually, know someone that was saved, or the 12-year-old girl that nobody called 911 for in Southside when she was shot in the leg by a stray bullet. The NCCU professor who was sleeping at night and woke up the next day with 12 bullets through his living room where his daughter was sleeping on the couch and no one called 911. There was an all-out shootout outside. And we start collecting these shell casings and we start collecting it and tracing them back to guns of actual, people who shoot all the time. There is the argument of why we shouldn't. We can look at it on paper. We can look at what happened in other cities. And then there's what we have in Durham. And one thing that's informing me are some of the family members that I've actually spoken to. And that doesn't discount what you all are saying in here tonight. I think that you're adding value to the conversation. And that's why I'm asking us to be respectful, because what you're saying matters. But also the stories that I don't know who's talked to my colleagues, but they talk to folks. But I know the folks that I've spoken to are informing the decisions that I make. And that's a representative government. And you're not always going to make the right decision. But what I've said to my colleagues, and what I'm going to say to myself, is make the best decision that you can. This is one issue tonight. And the way that I've counted up here so far, and I appreciate my colleagues, stating the way they're going to stand on this, I want to be able to make a fully informed decision. The funds for this program are already budgeted. It's the contractual authority. So there won't be any contractual authority. So what will happen is the program will go dark. So if someone does shoot in another household, if another 12-year-old girl gets shot, I only pray that someone calls 911, unlike they did the first time. And that is how these policies affect us personally. And that's beyond any advocacy point. It's beyond any positional point. So I respectfully appreciate everyone's comment in here. I respectfully appreciate all of my colleagues' position. But this is representative government, and these are the decisions that we make, and the outcome of those decisions are what we have to deal with. And that's just our reality. And this is our reality here tonight. So I will, if there are no more comments, I'll go ahead and call for a vote. I do have a question for staff. If this contractual agreement, and I'm going to ask you to speak very clearly in layman terms so that I and everyone else can understand. This doesn't pass tonight, the contractual extension, what happens to the program actively in the community? Is the equipment taken down? Does it stay up till we make a final determination in March? Like, what is the next step?
Sir, Jason Sheese again, Analytical Services Manager for the Police Department. So as you mentioned, the service would go dark. It would stop notifying the police department of gunfire events. It is at ShotSpotter's discretion as to whether they leave the sensors in place until such time as the independent report is produced and you can consider that information in deciding what to do next. It's also within their prerogative to take those sensors down because there is no contractual obligation any longer that would keep them in place.
Thank you for that. Based on the outcome, we'll see what happens. Thank you. I will now entertain a motion. I'll entertain a motion to authorize the city manager to execute a contract amendment with Sound Thinking Incorporated for the ShotSpotter, formerly Respond, subscription services, modifying the initial term from a period of 12 months ending on 12/14/2023 to 15 months ending on March 14, 2024, in the amount of $52,356,000 for a revised total contract amount of $249,856.
Moved as read.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, will you please open the vote? Can you close the vote, please?
And the motion fails 4-2 with council members Baker, Caballero, Freeman, and Rist voting no.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. Thank you, colleagues. Gotcha. Let me just inform these people so they aren't waiting too long. I have a few cards for individuals that signed up. My neighbor, Lee Mortimer, Andrew Silver, Fandra Japhonic, Reverend Ron J. Mar Davidson, I can't really see the handwriting, and Jerry Marcados. You all signed up for to speak on a ceasefire resolution, but we don't have that as an agenda item. Again, as I stated earlier, our work sessions are the space in which we allow general citizen concerns, and we'll allow up to 15 members of the community to speak at that time. 10, I'm sorry. members of the community to speak up at that time. That is the moment in which you come to share a general community or citizen concern. This week we'll have the work session on tomorrow rather than Thursday. And just make sure if you're signing up to speak virtually, you sign up by 10 a.m. And if you're signing up to speak in person, please sign up by 1 p.m. at the beginning of before the meeting starts. So I just didn't want you all to stay all night waiting for me to call that item that's not on the agenda. Thank you. The next item on the agenda for us to discuss is item 17. I'm sorry. We're going to make an agenda shift here. Number 22, Director Johnson. We're going to, colleagues, if this is okay, I'm going to move this item up, this public hearing. We will have accessibility on this sign language. This is item 22, fiscal year 2023-2024, annual action plan public needs hearing. Please have order in the room and respect, please. Item 22 is before us at this time. Director Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor Williams. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton, and City Council members. I'm Reginald J. Johnson, the Director of the Community Development Department. I'm also joined by Ms. Maggie Carnegie, who's Planning and Performance Manager in Community Development. This item is a public hearing. The purpose of this public hearing is to receive citizen comments on community development needs in Durham neighborhoods as it relates to the use and receipt of Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, Home Investment Partnership Program, Home Funds, the Emergency Solutions Grant, ESG, and Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS, HOPWA funds. This public hearing is a requirement for the preparation and submission of the city's draft FY 2024-25 Annual Action Plan to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. Notice of this meeting was properly advertised in the Herald Sun and Kapasa newspaper, distributed via the department's general listserv, as well as posted on the Community Development Department's webpage and the City of Durham's website. As a recipient of CDBG, Home, ESG, and HOPWA funds, the city is required to hold at least 2 public hearings prior to the submission of its annual action plan. The first meeting must be held early in the developmental stages of the plan. The department anticipates the second public hearing will be held in April or May of 2024. In addition, the city is required to publish a copy of its draft FY 2024-25 Annual Action Plan for citizen comment for at least 30 days prior to submission to HUD. The city's draft FY 2024-2025 Annual Action Plan must be submitted to HUD on May 15th, 2024, or as applicable. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, has not yet notified the city of its final entitlement amounts for FY 2024-25. For planning purposes, the city expects to receive approximately $2,030,000 in CDBG, $1,300,000 in home consortium funds, $180,000 in ESG, and $1,060,000 in HOPWA funds. In closing, a summary of the comments of this public hearing and written comments received from citizens during the development of the annual action plan will be incorporated into the draft FY 2024-25 annual action plan. Thank you, and that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Director Johnson. All right, thank you, Director Johnson. At this time, I will open this item up. This is a public hearing, and I will open this up. We have one person as a proponent signed up to speak. Yeah, Seth Hurley. All right. Do we have a Seth? There you go, Seth. Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Seth Hurley, and I'm a senior at the Durham School of the Arts. I'm a Durhamite through and through, having been born in Duke Hospital and having lived by Duke Park since. I'm here as a member of the Triangle Chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America, as well as to represent the Young Democratic Socialists of America at Durham School of the Arts. We have some thoughts on what Durham's fiscal year 2024 through 2025 budget should look like. Both organizations I mentioned earlier believe that housing is a human right, and I assume and hope you all do as well. Both organizations also recognize that public housing is an expensive undertaking for the government, yet we also agree that building and maintaining public housing needs to be one of Durham's top priorities. Durham is slated to receive several $1 million in federal grants in fiscal year 2024 through 25. This money would go a long way towards starting multiple public housing projects, supporting those in the community who need it most. Without housing, mental health issues tend to develop quickly and viciously, tearing people apart from the inside. These issues can range from schizophrenia to severe depression to psychosis. These severe mental health issues can lead people to use hard drugs, worsening their mental health in a ruthless cycle of self-destruction. Homelessness is a gateway to addiction. When people are forced to live on the streets, they are deprived of the support systems and resources they need to mentally deal with the daily challenges presented by life without a home. The fact of the matter is that a staggering 35% of people who are chronically homeless suffer from chronic substance abuse, a severe mental illness besides substance abuse, or both. The best way to begin helping those who we as a society have left behind is with substantial public housing projects. After this meeting, as everyone begins to filter out, a few of us will wander over towards Queenie's. On our way there will be someone sleeping on the sidewalk under a yellow blanket with trash strewn about them. Their name is Matt. Matt hasn't had a home for 15 months. He's around 44 years old, but looks like he's in his mid-50s. Matt is fully aware of his own declining mental health, joking to me at one point that he's walking around here talking like a madman. Matt knows his mental health is declining. He knows there's nothing he can do to stop it. When it's below freezing, he is forced to huddle up under that yellow blanket, hoping that his body heat is enough to make it through another night. If there were public housing, he would go to it. If there were ample homeless shelters, he would go to one. But there isn't housing, and the shelters are all full. This is just one of several hundred similar stories in Durham. We now have a chance to change this, not just for one, but for all people without homes in Durham. Those who don't have homes to go back to at night are people too, and deserve our full respect and compassion. So lend them a hand like you would anyone else. Fund public housing projects. Provide our most at-risk citizens a safe place to go at night. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments, and just a moment of personal privilege. Thank you for being engaged in the public process at such a young age. All right. This matter is open, is a public hearing. Are there any other? All right, Ms. Adams, if you don't mind, when you finish your comments, just put your card in for this item.
I will. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me this opportunity. First, I'm going to state that I am frustrated as a citizen that these first public hearings on such important funding always take place during the holiday season when most advocates and citizens don't see it. I myself am, on top of everything else, I missed this agenda item, and this is my issue, right? I missed it, and I'm grateful that you are allowing me to speak on it. We need to utilize our CDBG home funds in a way that supports affordable housing and the maintaining of our naturally occurring affordable housing. We are losing that funding left and right. We need to refocus our CDBG home monies, and if we can't use those funds, we need to use our housing trust fund money to rehabilitate, focus on rehabilitating our naturally occurring affordable housing. We need to maintain the housing stock that we have. We need to increase the amount of affordable housing, and we need to focus on the unhoused and those at 30% or below median. The majority of city workers make less than 80% of median and are considered by HUD to be low income. The majority of city workers are considered by HUD to be low income. So at the very least, we should be supporting housing for our workers. And we should be thinking about our workers whenever the word low-income housing comes before the council and affordable housing comes before the council. We need to be supporting and understanding who is served by these funds, these federal funds. And we need to, and I'm going to talk about it in a minute, but I'm going to talk about it now. We need to consider raising our affordable housing bond, increasing tax, half-cent tax to add more money to the fund so that we can extend it. We need to consider, as we're running down the clock on the current affordable housing bond, what a new bond would look like and how we match that with the federal funds. We need to be, as the young gentleman discussed, encouraging the public housing to serve the least of these. Too much of that fund is being used for mixed housing without increasing housing for 30% and below. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. This is a public hearing. Are there any other members of the public that would like to share comment? Thank you. If not, I'll bring this matter, I'll consider this public hearing closed and back before the council. Are there any comments amongst colleagues? Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. I would just want to co-sign on essentially the comments and acknowledging that housing is definitely the area we need to focus on, and the unhoused and those who are facing the challenges of our inflation, and whether unemployed or low income or no income, there has to be some plan put in place to address that. And hopefully, $2 million doesn't go very far. And so figuring out how we do put the dollars together in a collaborative way so that it's 200 million would be the way that we need to move forward. And how we get there, I'm hopeful that we can work together to figure that out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Freeman. Any other comments, colleagues? All right. Thank you very much. It's right in front of me. Okay. All right. Well, at this time, Councilmember Freeman.
I'm sorry, I was hoping you were going to say it, but if you're not, I do want to make sure that Ms. Adams understands that this is the first time that this is coming to us, but it will come back repeatedly throughout the rest of the season of the budget. And so it will also show up in, I think, what is it, February? If staff could help, I think February, June, and we will definitely be taking more comments on. So all those housing advocates will have a chance to share what they think might need to be added as well. So, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Got you. So, all right. So we'll officially close the public hearing at this time. There is no motion to be taken at this time. All right. Thank you all so much. We will now go back up to item number 17. One moment. I can just give these back to the clerk, right? Madam Clerk, do you mind helping me by collecting some of the cards? It's a lot going on up here. Thank you. All right, so the next item is number 17, Consolidated Annexation, Page Road, Greenwood. And at this time, we will receive our staff report.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Williams, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton, and honorable council members. I'm Alexander Cahill with the Planning Department. I'm happy to be here tonight. Staff would like to state for the record before we begin that all Planning Department hearing items have been noticed in accordance with local and state law, and affidavits of these notices are available upon request from the Planning Department. We received a request for utility extension agreement, voluntary annexation petition, and initial zoning map from George Weller of Greenwood Homes. And this is for 2 parcels of land totaling around 10 acres and located at the 2900 block of Page Road. This annexation petition is for a contiguous expansion of the primary corporate limits. The applicant intends to annex and rezone the property, connect city water and sewer, and construct up to 70 townhouse units. The current zoning on the site is residential rural. The applicant proposes to change this designation to Planned Development Residential 7.827. This request received a recommendation of approval from the Planning Commission on October 10th, 2023 by a vote of 6-3. The properties are currently designated mixed residential neighborhood and neighborhood service area on the place type map. The proposed PDR 7.827 zoning is consistent with the mixed residential neighborhood place type and inconsistent with the neighborhood services place type. If the zoning and annexation are approved tonight, staff recommends that the portions of the site that are designated neighborhood services are changed to mixed residential neighborhood on the zoning map. Thank you so much. Staff and the applicant are available to answer any questions this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Cahill. At this time, you've heard the staff report, and I do now declare this public hearing open, and will first entertain questions or comments from the council. All right, thank you. I would now entertain comments from the public. I do not have anyone online. I do not have any members online, but I do have 2 proponents for here in person. This looks like George Weller. And, okay, gotcha. I'm sorry.
Sorry, it's chicken scratch.
London Lovelace.
Yes.
All right. You now have, how much time do you think you need?
2 minutes.
2 minutes? Should we put 5 minutes on the clock?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. My name is Landon Lovelace. I'm with Underfoot Engineering, representing Mr. George Weller with Greenwood Homes in Raleigh tonight. Thank you, Alex, for the staff presentation. As Alex mentioned, we were before Planning Commission in October and did receive a favorable 6-3 vote. During the Planning Commission meeting, a couple of items came up for discussion. Those are specifically with regard to some comments and input that the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Council, the BPAC, had, as well as affordable housing. And before you take a vote, I just wanted to touch on those 2 topics quickly. So the BPAC offered 2 specific recommendations, which are outlined pretty specifically in the zoning map change report. Basically, they center around adding an access ramp from there's a portion of frontage on Page Road for the project, but there is no direct access from Page Road to the project. It'll actually be off Accent Park Road, but there is a 10-foot wide multi-use path that will be constructed along Page Road. And the BPAC suggested a connection via ramp out to Page Road. They also suggested doing some high visibility crosswalks and pedestrian signals down at the intersection of Globe Road. I don't disagree with either one of those suggestions, but they're infeasible or impossible. Number one, the portion of the trail would connect to a ditch section on Page Road, and there's nowhere to cross. We're a couple of 100 feet from the intersection at Globe Road, and DOT would not allow it. It would be a crossing to nowhere, literally in a section of road that would be dangerous to try to put a ramp to. And then a little bit further down, like I said, a couple 100 feet down is where the Globe Road intersection is. This stretch of road is definitely one that there is a lot of development on. It is not on any of the STIP plans, the current plans for improvement. BPAC also talks about sidewalk further down Globe Road. World Trade Center is about a little less than half a mile down Globe Road, and that's the first place the sidewalk picks up. And then aviation is a little bit further than that. So for numerous reasons why we don't disagree with the BPAC recommendations, they're just not possible to build with this project, though we agree that at some point they do need to be done. So as you guys are working through corridor studies and or working with the NCDOT, that corridor is definitely one that needs pedestrian access. The second one was with regard to the affordable housing, specifically with regards to compliance with the comprehensive plan policy on affordable housing. This PDR does offer payment to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund of $17,500. Greenwood Homes and George Willer is willing tonight to double that to $35,000 if we can proffer that tonight. In the recent past, Greenwood Homes has offered 5 completely built-out units in connection with 3 other rezonings that have been within the last 2 years, 12 months, that have passed through the city of Durham. Each project has its own specific nuances and finances, and has to stand on its own merit. And the payment that was offered for this was considered, and not every deal can support the same thing. So, like I said, he's willing to double that Affordable Housing Trust payment with a proffer tonight from $17,500 up to $35,000. As kind of a sidebar note, and this may not be the right time or not, but I think it would be extremely helpful if there were metrics to understand how well a project does or doesn't comply with the affordable housing comp plan policies. I know it's a new comp plan, and there was a lot of thought and a lot of planning for years that went into it. But specifically on any affordable housing payments or how we meet that affordable housing portion of the comp plan, I feel like there's some subjectivity and or ambiguity, and it's evidenced by the wide variety of different ways that different people handle that. So I would personally be interested in hearing if anybody's got specific feedback for this project with regards to that. Outside of that, we're here to answer any questions.
Thank you for your comments, and you see why I gave you 5 minutes.
Thank you.
We have next, if you'd like, George Willer, or you can, are you here for a resource? Okay, all right. All right, this is a public hearing. Are there any other members of the public that would like to add commentary? All right, not, I'll bring the matter back. I need to close it, right? All right, at this time, I'll declare this public hearing closed and bring the matter back before the council. Colleagues, any comments? Councilmember Baker.
Yeah, I've got 2 questions for the applicant. My first question is, just for clarity, we've been seeing a lot of projects that have been proposing at the rezoning stage 8 to 15% of the units at 80% affordable for 30 years. Are there going to be any units incorporated in this into this proposal? And then my second question is, we just, as you pointed out, there was a lot of work, 5 years, almost 5 years, into a comprehensive plan that was just adopted with the place type map. And this is inconsistent with the brand new plan and the brand new place type map. Is there a reason why you felt that it was unnecessary to follow the current comprehensive plan that was just adopted? Those are my 2 questions.
They're both good questions. I'll answer the first one first. I think that kind of goes into my kind of sidebar question with regard to the 8 to 15% of projects, or 10 to 15%, I think you said, of projects using at 80% AMI for 30 years. I would love to see where those numbers are coming from. Again, I feel like it's all over the board, and it has been for years. So it would be really nice to have a roadmap or a specific requirement. So it's not guesswork and it's not subjective. Again, each project stands on its own financial merits, and after consideration, I mean, George can answer differently if he'd like, but that was why we doubled the payment with a proffer tonight from $17,500 to $35,000. So to answer your question specifically, there would not be any units at 80% AMI for 30 years that would be proposed with the zoning.
Okay, and just I chose those numbers kind of roughly. That's just
Sure.
what we've been seeing a lot of.
Understand. And there's also a lot of X $100 per unit and or full built out units, and hence the difficulty in understanding what's appropriate if it's not clearly spelled out. It's a very good question, though. As far as the place type map, I may ask Alex to help a little bit, though I follow the planning departments and procedures of all the municipalities I work in. I was not integrally involved in the comp plan, but I believe the portion that is not consistent with is a neighborhood services portion, which is the front of the parcel. So this particular tract has been a landscape supply company for 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. They've got big mulch piles. They sell retaining wall block, fill dirt, knickknacks, plants, anything you can think of. So my guess is, not being a AICP or having an education in planning, but having been in the industry for 20 years, when the study is done, they look up and down corridors at what existing uses are, and oftentimes some of those will be carryovers. My guess is that's where the neighborhood services came in. If you look up and down that corridor, directly to the south is Tanglewood, which is a development that was rezoned, is actively being constructed right now. I'm not sure if they're quite building houses yet, but so there is an inconsistency there. But there's probably a case to argue that even in the comp plan, as thorough as it was, maybe it shouldn't have been neighborhood services.
Thank you. Any comments?
Sure. Thank you, Councilmember Baker. Sorry, old habits. Couple of things, great points. In terms of, we can't require affordable housing, so I understand the ask, and that is really great to hear, though. Some consistency in the new adopted comprehensive plan. So any transit-oriented transit opportunity area, we suggest, or the plan advises or recommends 20% of the units being designated affordable, which is 60% AMI for 30 years. And that any other residential place type, we suggest or advise that applicants consider 15% when they're able to make that work within a project. The second part is, you're absolutely right about why there's designation of neighborhood services and mixed residential on the place type site. However, with the neighborhood services, we always encourage that anything with a PDR or planned development residential, when possible and when the market is able to, a developer is able to do it, is provide some sort of mixed use within that. So getting to those neighborhood services uses within the residential component when it is viable.
Thanks, Alex. I'd also, just a last comment here, I would point out that mixed residential neighborhood states that there should be different housing types that are mixed together throughout the place type and not isolated in discrete parts of the development, and that it's safe to walk, bike, roll within or around neighborhoods to get to supporting places and transit stops. So that's all my comments. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other colleagues? Councilmember Caballero.
Thank you. This is a question for you, Alex. Is there a way to simplify, so to the applicant's point, it's something I'm hearing consistently, I get inclusionary zoning, right? But is there a way to at least streamline our suggestions so that it's easier for folks to try and meet them?
Absolutely. I think one of the things we can do, we have the new Durham Planning Dashboard, and we have some affordable housing data on there. I think we'd feel comfortable portraying some more of that information so people can see where the baseline is, and that way it doesn't come across as a recommendation.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And I know y'all are working diligently, and the comp plan just passed, and I know that folks are still trying to get used to it. So can I ask another clarifying question then? Is that garden store or whatever gone now? Like, that's what I'm confused about.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, he retired. He's shut down a year and a half ago. Some of the structures are still there, but the business has not been operating for quite some time.
Okay. I might
If you've seen people pulling in and out of there when you drive past, they're not supposed to be there.
Thank you. I might have another question, but I'm going to let my colleagues go. Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Rist.
Could you, I'm sorry, I didn't quite fully understand that your comments about the BPAC recommendations around the sort of the paths or the sort of access points. Can you please clarify that?
Sure. In the packet, you may have a copy of the D plan that's in there. If you look at the third sheet, C200, you can see that the site has frontage along Page Road. However, it's not adjacent to Globe Road. Globe Road tees into Page Road a couple of 100 feet south of this project, which would be an appropriate place to put pedestrian high visibility crosswalks as well as pedestrian signals. If DOT were to warrant them, which they would have to warrant them. The property directly to the south is not developed right now. There is a portion of Patriot Drive that actually starts over kind of at Miami by Patriot Center, and ultimately on the thoroughfare plan will come all the way through. You can see on the D plan there's a portion of it that bisects the parcel that we're trying to zone, and it will ultimately tie up to Globe Road. And at the time when those improvements are made and or additional improvements up Page Road are made, that would be an appropriate time for high visibility crosswalks and or pedestrian signals. But right now there is no other pedestrian network to tie to. Tanglewood that I mentioned previously, that's directly south, will have a 10-foot multi-use path along their frontage. But other than that, if you go north, there's a Baptist church 0.2 of a mile to the north. They have a small section of sidewalk. Other than that, there's no pedestrian facilities there. Or if you go across and down Globe Road, there's no existing pedestrian facilities there either until you get all the way to World Trade Center. And there's a sidewalk south going on World Trade Center. So, and this project is disconnected from that intersection by a couple 100 feet. So while we don't disagree with the sentiment that those would be very helpful, because I think they would be, it's not really appropriate or applicable to try to do those with this project.
Mayor Pro Tem Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I want to thank my colleagues for excellent pointed questions and observations. I'm particularly excited about our demonstrated desire to keep fidelity with the comprehensive plan that we just passed. I do want to say, however, and it's a fair point, but I think it's worth saying that inconsistency with the place type map is not necessarily nefarious.
Sure.
When we pass these things, it's a static moment, and I've seen neighborhoods change over the years. So while, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad thing that conditions have changed, businesses close, the surrounding neighborhood changes. So we, as decision makers, we always have to keep in tension real world facts as they evolve with, while keeping fidelity with our comprehensive plan and make, decisions on a case by case basis. But I do like the fact that we are talking more about what the spirit, the animated spirit of our comprehensive plan is. It wasn't so much for you. It was more of a general comment. Is Greenwood Homes, how large would you describe this as a big developer? Tell me a little bit about the size of Greenwood Homes as a business, LLC.
Well, I will let you speak, George. You can tell them about yourself much better than I can.
Yeah, that's short. We're a small.
If you'd wait till you approach, sir, thank you.
We can't hear you until you get to the mic.
Hi there, George Weller. Thank you for having me. Thank you for taking the time. We are small. We started in 2000, and we're based out of, we're here in Raleigh, North Carolina, as well as Charlottesville, UVA area, also Richmond, Virginia. So we're small, private. We build about 150, 200 homes a year. So we're a small developer. Okay. And last year we did 35 homes in the Triangle market. So we're a small, private.
What do you anticipate? It's an imperfect science, but what do you anticipate your price points being for these townhomes?
I would anticipate these will be in probably the low to mid 400s range. It's kind of consistent with the Lennar that's immediately developing. They do have homes under construction next door. There's some other large national builders that are within a quarter to half mile of the site that are in that price range. So we're not the market yet. There's certainly a lot of movement in commodities and things, but that's what we anticipate, somewhere in the fours.
This may be early. Do you Do you foresee them having garages?
Yes, they will have garages, absolutely. Each unit will have a one-car garage.
Okay. Can you say anything about forward-facing, rear-loading, or materials, aesthetics? And I know it's early, but do you have any sense of what they'll look like?
Sure, absolutely. It'll be very similar to what we've done with some other projects. They will have fiber cement. They will have multi-use, different materials from hardy plank to stone accents, probably some brick accents as well, architectural shingles. We tend to be kind of a move up, move down builder, so we typically aren't. At some level, it depends on the project. We'll certainly have some units at different price points, but we'll certainly have typically nicer finishes than some of the larger production entry-level type builders.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I yield
Thank
back.
you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Are there any other comments amongst the council? All right, well, at this time, I'm sorry, Councilmember Caballero, the other question you had?
Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and forecast how I'm, or state how I'm voting. And it is with some reservations, but it's more around not being as clear as we need to around affordability. I know that you, in general, we have been seeing trends with actual units proffered. Again, that is not a expectation. We cannot require that of you, but it is a trend, and it's what many of our other applicants are doing. I think the flip side of that is we're often seeing that from our very, very large builders. And so it's this kind of catch-22 of if we want to kind of diversify the kinds of folks who are able to come and do rezonings in front of this council who don't have the capital to sink it, they may not be able to do that right away. So I will be supporting this project this evening. I think my hope and expectation is working with staff to get clearer guidelines so folks know what our kind of very enthusiastic asks are instead of requirements. And so that way folks in the development community can see that early on as they're working through their budgets and getting projects to be able to pencil out. And I think that because you're smaller and more locally, more local, I hope you take that to heart and know that we're, as you can see across the triangle, quite serious about affordable housing and affordability in Durham. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Caballero. Are there any other comments? All right, thank you all. At this time, I'll declare this public hearing closed. Did you? Councilmember Freeman.
Just a question on how you got to the 72.5 or the 17. Like, what was your actual, I guess, math in doing that number or getting to that number?
So based on the PDR rezoning, it allows up to 70 units. 17.5 is 250 a unit.
Say that again.
It's 250. Yep, it's a max of 70 units. And the proffer still stands to double that. Obviously, it was already made.
And I just want to make sure that staff has actually captured that.
Thank you, Councilmember Freeman. Yes, we have language to increase the proffer from $17,500 to $35,000 contribution to the dedicated housing fund prior to the first certificate of occupancy.
Thank you, and I appreciate Councilmember Caballero's point about making it clear. I do think that anyone that's heard about what's happening in Durham knows that the units are what we're looking for. And so I will not be supporting this at this time. I do appreciate the additional proffer, and I know that this is the direction that we're going in, but I need to help you along and encouraging other developers with a no vote tonight. Thank you.
All right, and Councilmember Freeman, I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. You said you were a no for this one to encourage other developers? Okay. All right. Well, I said I was going to declare the public hearing closed. I already did that. So what I have to do now is, if there are no more comments, I'm going to entertain the motion. I have three motions here, and I will entertain the first motion to adopt an ordinance annexing Page Road, Greenwood into the city of Durham effective December 31st, 2023, and to authorize the city manager to enter into a utility extension agreement with Greenwood Homes Raleigh LLC.
Moved as read.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Madam Clerk, please open the vote. Please close the vote.
And the motion passes 4-2 with council members Baker and Freeman voting no.
Thank you. And our second motion is to adopt an ordinance amending the Unified Development Ordinance by taking property out of residential rural county jurisdiction and establishing the same as planned development residential 7.827 city jurisdiction.
Moved as read.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded. Madam Clerk, please open the vote. Madam Clerk, please close the vote.
And the motion passes 4-2 with council members Baker and Freeman voting no.
Thank you. And finally, our third motion to adopt a consistency statement as required by North Carolina General Statute 160D-605.
Move to adopt consistency.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Madam Clerk, please open the vote. Please close the vote.
And the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Our next item, we are going to pause, right? Yep. We're going to pause at this moment to recess for 10 minutes to take a break. And we will come back at 9:10. 9:14. Thank you.
Are you interested in hearing what others in our community are saying?
Recording
If so, you want
stopped.
to check out Be Heard Durham. It's a new online platform that collects and amplifies community conversations for change. The portal is especially focused on making sure that voices from members of historically underrepresented communities are heard and used to help shape city decision-making and lead to positive change. The feedback featured in the portal is gained through small group conversations where Durham residents share their visions for their communities. Our community engagement team then shares the information from those conversations through their Be Heard Durham portal. Visit the portal now at durhamcommunityengagement.org.
Let's just get started with the million-dollar question right out of the gate. What does your office do?
Oh, wow. I might say, what don't we do in some ways? The city attorney's office is a full-service in-house legal department for the city of Durham, which is a municipal corporation. So we provide legal services to meet the needs of the city in a variety of different ways, right? When you think about the work that attorneys do, oftentimes it's specialized by practice, right? So you might take a bankruptcy attorney who does bankruptcy work for numbers of different clients. On the other hand, the city attorney's office has one client, just a town or city, and we do all of the different things that that town or city might need from a legal perspective.
make your life interesting. She told me, Alex, you're so much better respected by council. She thinks I'll torque them out, so you need to present. Kim's known us since '99. She's probably right about these things. That's impressive. She doesn't realize she's 18.
Thank you so much. The time is now 9:14, and we're going to bring the meeting back to order. We are now on item number 18, zoning map change 3317 and 3325, Rose of Sharon Road. And we'll now hear the staff report.
Great, good evening. Thank you again, Mayor, and Alexander Cahill with the Planning Department. We received a request for a zoning map change from Andy Porter of TMTLA Associates for 2 parcels of land totaling about 7.5 acres and located at the 3300 block of Rose of Sharon Road. The current zoning on the site is residential suburban 20. The applicant proposes to change this designation to PDR 6.400 to allow up to 46 townhouse units. The properties are presently designated mixed residential neighborhood on the place type map. This proposed PDR 6.4 zoning is consistent with the designated place type map. This request, case Z2309, received a recommendation of approval from the Planning Commission on October 10th, 2023 by a vote of 6-3. In addition, because I know some council members are maybe new tonight, this is a textual development plan, and so you won't see any graphic commitments or a graphic plan, but you will see commitments that are textually written or written in the Word format. Thank you, and staff and the applicant are available to answer any questions this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Cahill. Colleagues, his honor is off the podium for a moment. Madam Clerk, I'll be assuming the gavel for just a moment. We've heard the report from staff. At this time, I'm going to see if any of my honorable colleagues have any questions or comments for staff. Seeing none, I'm going to declare this public hearing open and we'll welcome the applicant to come. Good evening and welcome. How much time do you anticipate needing?
Let's say 5 minutes.
Let's put seven minutes on the clock, please.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Appreciate that. Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, and Mr. Mayor, wherever he may be. My name is Pam Porter. I'm with TMTLA Associates, and with me here tonight is Alex Mango with Summit Engineering and Danny and Zeke Espidia with Toledo Builders. And thank you, Alexander, for the presentation. As he mentioned, we're requesting to rezone the 7.5 acre parcel site from RS20 to a PDR designation of 6.4 for the development of up to 46 townhomes. The primary access for this development will be on Rose of Sharon Road, excuse me, across from Hum Station Lane, which is the entrance to the River's Edge neighborhood. And we're also proposing a stub to the property to the south for future connectivity if and when those parcels develop. As noted in the staff presentation, we are compliant with UDO requirements and consistent with the place type maps, and we did receive a favorable recommendation of approval at Planning Commission in October. And our proposal will increase diversity of the housing in an area that is where it's much needed per the place type map. So our project is only 7.5 acres. And with that mixed, with the place type map designation, normally with larger projects, we would be presenting you a project with 2 different housing types. But given the size, we thought just going with townhomes is more appropriate, as if you zoom out just a little further and look around this area, it is predominantly single-family detached. So we feel that we are meeting that requirement with the place type map. The developer originally committed to a one-time contribution to the Durham Public Schools of $11,000 and a one-time contribution to the dedicated housing fund of $24,000. But we talked earlier today, and they are able to increase the donation. So increasing the DPS donation to $16,000 and the affordable housing donation to $29,000. We also discussed the possibility of proffering any affordable units. This is a small project, maximum of 46 units, and they were able to run the numbers, and it's not feasible financially for them to proffer any units, but they are able to increase their donation and are willing to do so tonight. And in addition to those additional monetary proffers, we have 2 additional proffers, and these come from the bike ped comments that we received. So the first one is we are going to increase the width of the multi-use path from 10 feet to 12 feet along our frontage, as well as include curb ramps where the multi-use path crosses our site access. We're able to do those. The other 2 dimensionally may not work and also are very expensive. So the developer is doing what they can to help meet those bike ped advisory comments. And I did want to take a quick moment to just tell you a story about the developer. Toledo Builders is a small local business, and Danny and Zeke's father, who's here tonight, was a drywaller and painter who emigrated here from Mexico. And he got into building houses as a means to show off his craft. And that's how Toledo Builders was founded. And they've built homes all over the Triangle, but this is their first development in Durham and their second development ever. Before, all they've done was build lots, or buy lots and build houses. So they've chosen Durham to do their second development project, which I think is pretty cool. And they're also not only local to Durham, but local to this part of Durham. So Zeke and Danny both attended Riverside High School, and their sister is a teacher there as well. So not only local to the city, but local to this particular area. And that's it for my presentation. 4 minutes, that's not bad. And we think this is a great small-scale project that will add much-needed housing stock and diversity to this part of Durham. And we thank you for your consideration, and we're here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Porter. His honor is back on the dais, but per his directive, I'm going to continue and finish up this item. Madam Clerk, I don't have any cards for any speakers. Do you have anyone in queue on our virtual platform? All right. This is a public hearing, friends. Is there anyone in the chamber that wishes to speak on this matter? This is a public hearing. Seeing none, I'm going to declare this public hearing closed. The matter is back before the council, and I ask my honorable colleagues if any of them have any questions or comments. Councilmember Caballero, please.
Thank you. Good evening. Buenas tardes or buenas noches. Mucho gusto. Y gracias por estar acá con nosotros. I will enthusiastically be supporting this project. I think this is exactly the kind of development we need. We need folks who grew up here, went to school here, and as I said on December 4th, are betting on Durham. So thank you for the increased proffers. I really appreciate that. And roll Pirates, roll.
Thank you, Councilmember. Colleagues, anyone else? Councilmember Riss, please.
Just a question. Could you please confirm those proffers again? I just want to make sure I have those.
Sure. So there's 4 proffers that we're making tonight. 2 monetary proffers to increase donations. The first one is to increase the Durham Public School donation from $11,000 to $16,000. The second one is to increase the dedicated housing fund donation from $24,000 to $29,000. And in addition to those, increasing the width of the multi-use path along the frontage of Rose of Sharon Road from 10 feet to 12 feet, which came from the bike ped comments, as well as including curb ramps where the multi-use path crosses our site access, which is another one from the bike ped comments.
Thank you for those proffers, and thank you for the recognizing the comments from BPAC.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Councilmember. Colleagues, anyone else? I'm sorry. Would you? Freeman, please.
Just making sure that, Alexander, you received all of that. I know you're steadily typing.
Thank you, Councilmember Freeman, for looking out for me. Yes, just to repeat back, we have an increase of the contribution of the Durham Public Schools in the amount of $16,000, increase in the amount of contribution to dedicated housing fund in the amount of $29,000, an increase of the width of the multi-use path from 10 to 12 feet, and the inclusion of curb ramps where the path crosses on the site.
You got it. And I'll send you an email if you want me to.
That'd be even better.
Yes, I will do that.
I will just add that with Riverside graduates, just a soft spot in my heart. My sister is a graduate, and so I will be able to support this project going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Colleagues, Mr. Mayor, did you want to?
Just thank you for investing in home. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, colleagues. Colleagues, this matter requires 2 motions. The first one is motion 1. I will entertain a motion to adopt an ordinance amending the Unified Development Ordinance by taking property out of residential suburban 20 RS20 Eno District-B and establishing the same as Planned Development Residential 6.400 PDR 6.400 Eno District B.
So move.
Second.
I heard a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, would you please open the vote? Would you please close the vote and report out?
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. The second motion, colleagues, is to adopt a consistency statement as required by NCGS 160D-605.
So move.
Second.
Heard a motion from Councilmember Freeman and a second from Councilmember Riss. Madam Clerk, would you please open the vote? Would you please close the vote and report out?
And again, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Item 18 is discharged. I yield back to His Honor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. We are now on item number 19, UDO Text Amendment, Omnibus 18. And we will now hear the staff report.
Great, thank you. Good evening again. Mayor Williams, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton, honorable council members. We are going to start doing the same presentation that we do for Board of County Commissioners, for City Council, that we do for text amendments, just to provide a little additional context and clarity, and to ensure community members have the same information that y'all have. You're going to see a couple of Unified Development Text Amendments tonight, 3 to be specific. These are proposed changes or revisions to the existing zoning rules and regulations in Durham. In Durham, the Unified Development Ordinance, or as you'll hear me call it the rest of the night, the UDO, is a tool that regulates how Durham development looks, sounds, and feels in the city and the county. This specific amendment is brought forth by staff and is organized into 2 sections. One is around comprehensive plan implementation, and the second is around technical revisions to the code. So the first change is a change in the mailing notification range. Presently, it sits at 600 feet, and we are proposing to change this to 1,000 feet. This is to reach properties specifically in the county area where maybe they're a little bit further apart, but also to encourage additional participation in neighborhood meetings and public hearings for those within proximity of 1,000 feet of a project. This is in line with the comprehensive plan goals that was recently adopted around community relationship building. The next is to make a change to allow a resident signposting for multifamily rental properties when address information is not available for direct mail notices. We discussed this at the Joint City-County Planning Committee, and one of the things we were doing is waiting to see how Raleigh's implementation went with that. We learned from what they were doing, and so we are ready to implement it as well. Oftentimes when we send out mailings, if it's a multifamily unit, the actual renters and tenants do not have notice or do not get notice of the meeting, and we want to expand that. So we will be having a resident sign and potentially a neighborhood meeting sign as well on site. The next change is around Article 5, where we're looking to update the daycare use category to really clarify what child care centers are and to align with NC state definitions around what child care centers are. This is to ensure that, one, we are consistent in our regulation of the child care centers, and 2, to allow the same sort of flexibility. We know that when we define something, it has implications, and so we want to make sure we're defining things consistently across different regulations. This update also includes adding urgent cares or emergency medical offices within the medical facilities category. Again, so we have a clear definition and can regulate consistently with NC general statutes. The next change is in consultation with Durham Public Schools, removing the requirement to obtain a special use permit to construct a school and instead have them go through the rezoning process. I do want to clarify that schools are currently permitted in non-residential categories, and that won't change. So if a school needs to rezone because they're not in a non-residential use category, they would go through the rezoning process instead of a special use permit. The reason was, is as DPS went through their 10-year capital plan, they identified barriers to implementation, and one of those barriers was the quasi-judicial hearing process, which is the what a special use permit goes through. So that is us getting a start on some of the comprehensive plan policy implementation. Anywhere we see an opportunity and we feel like council or Boundary County commissioners would support it, we're going to try to make sure we're doing that. So this is a living live document. The second set of updates are technical updates. This is where staff, applicants, or community members may have noticed something or proposed a current issue in the code, and so we are working to clean it up. So the first is that parcel IDs are no longer parcel IDs. The Durham County Tax Office made the change a couple months ago. They're all called real estate IDs now, and so we needed to go through the code and reference that accurately. The second change is really council specific. So right now there's no process when an annexation is denied. What's the word? Concurrent zoning map change just kind of sits in limbo and essentially waits for a new annexation to come in. So we're proposing to add some clarity that when an annexation is denied, council is signaling that that zoning map change should be automatically withdrawn, and that when that annexation is ready to come back, just like a new case, the zoning map change will come back as a new case as well. The other two are really in line with state code, including a 180-day grace period for subdividers to file and record approved exempt plat status before it becomes void. That's in line with state statutes. And then the other thing is we already do this, so we just wanted to make sure we are consistent with what our practice is, and that is allowing street closing applications to come directly to the planning department instead of going to the clerk's office, which is what the current code says it needs to do. And then on the next slide specifically, I want to make sure I address, I know Councilmember Freeman had some questions about this, so I just want to make sure I followed up on that. Removing the accessory structure requirement to construct a fire obstruction wall for structures located less than 5 feet from the property line. Building code specifies what that distance should be, and we are ensuring that the code is in line with the building code in this aspect. Next, changes to Article 7. So one of the things that we've heard from developers and the market rate community is the reason that we're not getting duplexes is several reasons, but one of them is that people don't like shared driveways. They want their own driveway, and our current code only allows one driveway per duplex. So we're proposing to allow 2. This will hopefully, our intended outcome is to increase the construction and supply of duplex units because virtually or almost none are being constructed now. Most of the ones that we have in our inventory are existing duplex units. The next is environmental protections in Article 8. So we are proposing to remove the exemption for tree coverage for 1- and 2-family dwellings that are required to meet the infill standards. I think it's pretty clear that our elected officials, the comprehensive plan, community members very strongly care about our environmental protections, and one of the things that we can do is to encourage tree coverage in infill areas, so that is single family and these duplex units. So no more, we're proposing that there won't be an exemption for tree coverage in those areas anymore for 1- and 2-family dwelling units. Last, wrapping up here, Article 9 and Article 14. So for buffers, we don't have a current requirement for when a project is on the county boundary on what the buffers should be because the buffers are based on corresponding zonings within Durham. So when we have something like on Orange County line or Chatham, we don't have a current requirement, so we're proposing a 0.6 opacity buffer. So that way we are creating that buffer just as we would somewhere else. And then nonconformities, we don't actually have a clear prohibition in the ordinance right now that doesn't allow a project to create a nonconformity. And so we are explicitly putting in the ordinance that you cannot create a nonconformity with your project. And then lastly, Article 17, again, talked about how important it is to define things accurately in line with state statutes and in line with what we're seeing. And some of the changes that we're making in addition to accessory dwelling units is also bars, breweries, wineries, distilleries, and the care centers that go along with state statutes. Again, this is so we can properly regulate them, but also ensure that that clarity that the development community needs when they're proposing a use, and they know exactly what bundle of restrictions or regulations come with that use. The Planning Commission did recommend approval by a vote of 9-0 at their 11/14 meeting on Omnibus 18. The Board of County Commissioners approved Omnibus 18 by a vote of 4-0 at their 12/11 meeting, and staff does recommend council approve the changes that we put forth. Thank you so much, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Cahill, for that robust report. At this time, are there any questions for staff? All right, Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. Just a few quick questions. The first one, are these changes related to SCAD?
These changes are not related to SCAD.
Just want to make sure the public knows. And then also for Article 3, for the notifications, I just wanted to just take a moment and to appreciate it's taken this long to get to this point, but I do want to say that it was some insights from the city attorney's office and specifically Krista Kukuro, who's no longer with us, and Sophia, what's her last name? Hernandez. And I really appreciate that some of the items from the Tenants' Bill of Rights managed to make it through in the last 2 years. And so I do want to just put it on folks' radar that it is a process and it does take time, but I've not given up on trying to push for these things to move forward. And so even if it's just notification or for tenants and, extended distance, I do want to just note for future reference, figuring out an equitable way to do this because it's very different in rural areas than it is in the urban areas. And so 1,000 feet does make a huge difference urbanly. I don't know that it does rurally. And so there may need to be some tied, like RR specific distance changes. But I'll leave that for a future date. I just want to make sure that I ring that bell now. And then for Article 5, I did want to ask if churches were, what process do churches go through if they're going to change their uses? Is it a special use permit process in that same quasi-judicial, they go through that same process? And if that's not something we're leaving out right now for a reason.
Director Young.
Good evening, Sarah Young with the Planning Department. Yes, there are several other institutional uses that also follow a quasi-judicial process. That is one of the things that we are looking to potentially undo in the UDO rewrite, because this isn't the only place. It's just that DPS is someone that we have a working relationship with, and they were ready to go ahead and make that step now. We have not been able to do the type of outreach that would be necessary to make sure that our places of worship and some other affected institutions understand what those changes might mean. But it is something that we are trying to equitably, deploy across the board with the UDO rewrite. So.
And you do feel positive about it being something that could come up and change?
Yes, absolutely.
That's mainly the point. Thank you. And one last, sorry, and I know it passed the county, so I'm going to support it, but I do think it's worth noting that a 0.8 opacity would be even better. But thank you. That's all.
All right, are there any other questions for staff? All right, at this time, I will open this item to public I will open this to a public forum. I'm losing my words here. This is a public hearing at this time. No, it is not.
No one signed up.
I'm sorry. It is getting late. It is a public hearing, but no one has signed up. So I will entertain if there's anyone that would like to speak to this item. Ms. Adams, would you please come to the podium? State your name and address, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hope that a council member will ask staff the question for me. What impact does this change have on the number of child care facilities? Will it increase the number of the ease for child care facilities, or will it restrict it? Because there is a great need for more facilities in our community to match the increased population. So I just want to know, do you anticipate that the changes have a negative or positive or neutral impact on child care facilities?
I'll honor that.
All right. That is an excellent question. Thank you for asking that. So because we initiated these changes, we are able to track them and build some metrics in to see how they play out. Our intent is that it actually helps provide ways to provide more opportunities for child care centers at all different varying age groups. As with everything, we know child care is very complicated, and this really needs to be a multi-pronged approach. So this is also in addition to some of the comprehensive plan policies around child care and co-siting child care within projects in development.
Thank you. This matter is still open to the public. If there are any other members of the public that would like to add comment. All right, thank you. At this time, I will declare the public hearing closed and back before the council. Colleagues, are there any comments amongst you? Thank you. Well, at this time, we will entertain two motions. Motion 1, to adopt an ordinance amending the Unified Development Ordinance incorporating revisions to Article 3, applications and permits, Article 5, use regulations, Article 6, district intensity standards, Article 7, design standards, Article 9, landscaping and buffering, Article 14, nonconformities, and Article 17, definitions.
So moved.
A motion?
Yes.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, please open the vote. Please close the vote.
The motion passes 6-0.
Thank you, colleagues. And we will move to the second motion to adopt a consistency statement as required by North Carolina General Statute 160D-605.
So move.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Madam Clerk, please open the vote. Please close the vote.
And again, the motion passes 6-0.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. It's number 19, Omnibus 18. Sorry, I got a little confused there.
Now you're on 20.
It's like, did I just read the wrong motions? All right. We are now on item 20, UDO Text Amendment, Pedestrian Mall. We would now have the staff report.
All right, thank you, Mayor Williams. I will be robust but succinct this time, I promise. We received a privately initiated text amendment to change the provisions around how pedestrian malls are regulated. The general definition of a pedestrian mall is characterized as a number of blocks of public downtown streets designated for pedestrian-only use and closed to vehicular traffic. The specific Durham UDO definition is a public or private improved area intended for public, pedestrian, and non-motor use that is permanently preserved for such use through limited easements or rights of enforcement granted to the city or other similar legal techniques. This was initiated by Jeremy Anderson of Thomas and Hutton. The proposal aims to provide a pleasant, safe, and walkable experience for community members in pedestrian mall plazas. The intent is for additional space to be dedicated to street-level activities like dining, sitting and playing areas, larger green space, and landscaped areas, along with greater transitions between development and adjacent areas. At the JCCPC meeting on October 4th, 2023, staff were provided direction to consider some additional amenities that might be included in exchange for some additional width in a pedestrian mall. Staff worked with the applicant and identified potential amenities that could be included in a project if there was an additional width. These included a public art feature, additional landscaping, and/or outdoor seating. So the change is to, currently pedestrian malls are allowed at 50 feet maximum. The applicant is proposing to change to 75 feet as the maximum, or if they're providing those additional amenities, allowing them to go up to 100 feet. And this is really to, again, allow additional activated space for pedestrians and also to co-site additional amenities. And then quickly, I'll show you 3 examples of what these widths look like. A 50-foot is Brightleaf, so I'm sure everybody's walked Brightleaf. That's what 50 feet feels like. CCB Plaza, now I know we have a roadway to the side, but this is what a 75-foot wide kind of pedestrian mall area looks, sounds, and feels like. And then the American Tobacco campus up towards the silo starts to approach 100-foot maximum. And this is where if y'all approve this tonight, it would be the additional amenities required in that 100-foot maximum. So the Planning Commission did recommend approval by a vote of 9-0 at their 11-14 meeting. The Board of County Commissioners approved this by a vote of 4-0 at their 12-11 meeting. And based on other successful pedestrian malls, both in Durham and across the country, staff feel comfortable supporting this increase to 75 feet or 100 feet with additional amenities. Thank you. And I believe the applicant is here as well to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you for that report. Also, thank you for the graphics of downtown. That's pretty cool. All right, we will now declare this public hearing open. And we have the applicant here, Jeremy Anderson. How much time do you think you need, sir?
25 seconds.
All right, put 1 minute.
Yeah, again, Jeremy Anderson, Thomas and Hutton, thank you very much. I'm really just here to answer questions specifically. You have specific questions about the ask, the text amendment, I'll answer it, but Alexander went through, it's not very complicated, and hopefully the graphics kind of speak for himself. So happy to answer specific questions on that.
All right, reclaiming my time. All right. So this is a public hearing. If there are any members of the public that would like to make any comments? All right. Well, at this time, I will declare the public hearing closed and back before the council. Colleagues? Thank you. All right. Well, this matter is for our consideration. We have 2 motions before us. Motion 1 to adopt an ordinance amending the Unified Development Ordinance incorporating revisions to Article 16, Design Districts, Section 4, Streetscape, Right-of-Way, Block and Lot Standards.
Moved as read.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Madam Clerk, please open the vote. Please close the vote.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And motion 2, to adopt a consistency statement as required by NCGS 160D-605.
Move to adopt consistency.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Madam Clerk, please open the vote. Please close the vote.
And the motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. And we are now on item 21. 109 and 1. All right. Okay, 1 in person. Okay. At this time, we're here to staff report.
Good evening. I'm Curtis Massey with the County Attorney's Office. I know normally you'd expect a UDO text amendment to be presented by the planning staff, but this one is in response and an effort to correct and amend the ordinance in response to some litigation which has been initiated against the county. And since I inherited that litigation in July, I'm here to present the amendment and hopefully explain to your satisfaction the need for it. You got it up?
It'll be up in just a moment.
Okay.
The city
I'm not going to turn into a
has great
pumpkin,
technology,
but,
sir. Yeah, they're working on it in the back. Should he go to the podium?
I'll go anywhere you like, where you want me.
All right, we see it on Zoom, but we don't see it in-house.
Well, you got it on your screens there?
It's on Zoom, just not in-house. We can, it's part of our agenda. There we go. All right.
And there was much rejoicing. All right, maybe not. All right, conservation subdivisions are a planning tool in the residential rural tier, which permit concentrated development in one area of the subdivision in order to preserve natural and open space elsewhere. In fact, the basic buy-in for a conservation subdivision is that 50% of the property must be preserved as natural or open space. Now, I say the initial commitment because then there are particular details of the type of land that has to constitute a conservation subdivision in terms of that natural and open space. Now, the point of the current amendment is to clarify the intent and the applicable standards for conservation subdivisions consistent with what has historically been done and required by planning under the ordinance and the requirements of the actual standards in 624H. And it's due, as I said, or it's come before you because of a legal challenge to a conservation subdivision approved by the county last year. Now, typically, conservation subdivisions are approved by the planning staff because it's an administrative decision. But in that instance, there was also a special use permit, and because of the special use permit going to the Board of Commissioners under the UDO, the subdivision approval went to them as well. Now, if you come up to 624A, this is the purpose statement in the ordinance. And these are the 12 purposes which the opponents to the approved subdivision contend are mandatory requirements, all 12 of which must be met. And they make that contention based on the fact that the language says, the conservation subdivision shall be established for the following purposes. And then you'll notice after number 11, it says and. So they say that list of 1 through 12 inclusive all must be met. So you've got that language, and then you've got the language in B, which is the next slide. And you'll see where it says, in accordance with the standards set forth in 624A purpose and 624H. And read literally, it means what they say. You have to meet all 12 of those, comma, but. While it may say that, functionally, it doesn't work. Functionally, it means you cannot ever approve a conservation subdivision. I'm going to explain that more completely. So if we can go to number 5, and this is 624A again. And what you will see is of these 12, some of them, the ones in yellow, you'll notice, are not really standards. The very first one, to provide flexibility of design in order to promote environmentally sensitive and efficient uses of land. Classic purpose, but is it a standard to meet or that can be met? It just says, here's what you can do. Similarly, with number 4, to permit clustering of houses and structures. Number 6, to promote interconnected greenways and corridors. 7, to promote contiguous green space with adjacent jurisdictions. Number 8, to encourage interaction in the community. Number 10, to promote construction of landscaped walking trails. You encourage, you promote. Those are not real standards. And number 9, the one in blue, to encourage street designs that reduce traffic speeds and reliance on main arteries. It has nothing to do with preserving open and natural space. Now, these are some of them, 2, 3, 5, 11, and 12, are general statements of actual purposes, which are further defined within 624H. And I'd like you to particularly remember the words floodplains, wetlands, steep slopes, and woodlands in number 2, and scenic views in number 11. If we could go over to slide 7, please. Because here's where you get into 624H, which are the primary conservation areas. And you'll notice it says at least 80% of the required open space shall consist of primary conservation areas. And then those are defined further. For wetlands, protected by the Army Corps of Air Engineers or Department of Environmental Quality. When we talk about steep slopes, you notice in E it says areas of at least 5,000 contiguous square feet in size with natural slopes greater than 25%. We go to the next slide, please. Where A talked about woodlands, here you have forest of at least 1 contiguous acre in size in which healthy hardwood trees at least 10 inches in diameter at breast height comprise at least 60%, I'm sorry, I gotta get my glasses redone, 50% of the area. Those are specific achievable standards. And when you talk about scenic views, here you will notice in M, just above the captioning, view sheds from designated federal and North Carolina scenic byways. Those are specific obtainable standards. Now, and remember, primary conservations have to be at least 80% of the natural and open space. So this is 40% of the total space in a subdivision. If you can go to the next slide. If you can't do 100% from primary, but you have met the 80%, then you can fill in with what are called secondary conservation areas, and then finally, other open space. Now, I want to give you a feel for the other problem. The second problem, and this is the main one, is shown on the slide next up. Because planning has put together a map which has a few of the prominent features displayed. Now, the yellow areas are the rural residential area. The parts in blue are the floodplain. That red loop at the top and to the west are 2 North Carolina scenic byways. The green spaces are greenways and trails. The purple boxes are the eligible historic sites. What you will note is of those 5 features, none of them all occur together. And that's why I said, and this is just 5 of the 12 they contend have to be met, which means that you have now, by definition, accepting their construction, said no conservation subdivisions can ever be approved in Durham County. They do not exist. That leads to an absurd result. And that's how the county has defended the lawsuit brought against us. We won it in Superior Court. They've now taken it up on appeal. And I'm confident of how that appeal will go, but at the same time, it doesn't change the fact that the language in the existing ordinance is problematic. And so the planning staff has proposed a couple of fixes. And if you can come to the next one, I'll show you the change for 624A. what you will see is it says at the very first, it's underlined. The conservation subdivision standards are established for the following purposes. They've deleted number 9 and the word "and" after 11. And then in 624B, the next slide, they have just deleted the standards set forth in paragraph 1224H and deleted the language about paragraph 624A, because the purpose of 624A are general statements and general aspirations, basically collateral benefits that may result, but they're not truly standards. Now, these amendments were approved by the Planning Commission. They were approved by the Board of Commissioners at their meeting on December 11th. We hope they're acceptable to you and that you will approve them as well. If you have any questions, I hope I can answer them.
Well, thank you, Deputy Attorney, for taking us through the first year of law school. That's what it felt like. Now, thank you for this very helpful information. I will open it up for, actually, this is an actual public hearing, so I'm going to open it up to the public, and we do have one online speaker and one in person. Ms. Ross, can you hear me? Katie Ross, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
I
This is
can. You have
Katie.
3 minutes. Welcome.
Oh, do you want the online, do you want the in-person to go first?
Nope, I want you to go first.
Oh, all right. Well, this is Katie Ross. I'm up in Bahama. Here is what I think. I'm an attorney, so is Robin Barefoot, who I believe also is there and going to talk. And what I think is that instead of you all putting on your effort to be attorneys or be judges and decide if Mr. Massey is correct or not, that you allow the Court of Appeals to do that, which is their job in just a few months, to tell us what the current conservation subdivision ordinance means. We believe it means what it says, and that those purposes, not if they can't be met, must be met, but if they can be met, must be met. Some of you have been out on the bus tours with Preserve Rural Durham. You have seen the absolute horrific mess and destruction of the environment that is being created under the name conservation subdivision. Some, not all developers, but some developers have taken the current statute, disregarded, and the planning department has allowed them to disregard the purposes, just taken the advantages of mass grading and triple density that the statute, that conservation allows them, but not any of the purposes. And they have made a mess, and you've seen it. Why would you jump ahead instead of just waiting a few months and letting the actual judges of the Court of Appeals tell you whether the planning department has been approving these conservation subdivisions correctly, or whether they haven't? And if the ordinance means what I'm not a plaintiff, but what the plaintiffs say that it means, then in the future, there will be less destruction and conservation subdivision will mean something. If the planning department and Mr. Massey are correct, then they'll just carry on as it has been. And the destructive, mean nothing approvals will continue. But I certainly think that you've seen what's been happening. You shouldn't want that to continue to happen unless the Court of Appeals says that's the correct interpretation of the law. So I can tell you that this was in the, this was part of the Omnibus 18 bill back in October. At that point, it was pulled because at that point, the commissioners wanted to wait and see what the Court of Appeals was doing. Then they tweaked it a little bit. They got Mr. Massey involved, and now they're saying it's about the lawsuit, which they didn't say before.
Thank you
Please
so
just
much,
let the
Ms.
judges
Ross.
do their job, and
Thank you. That was your time. I know it's really hard to hear that buzzer, but that was your time. Thank you so much. Ms. Barefoot, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon. I'm Robin Barefoot. My address is on record. I'm under very few illusions that my remarks will change the vote of the council tonight, but hope springs eternal. My being here tonight is primarily for the record and to carry the flag for those council members who have demonstrated aptitude to understand the harm of unrestrained and exploitative development. I acknowledge the statute can be approved, but I am also very clear, and I think you are as well, that the 16 conservation subdivisions that have been approved have been devastating for the area of Durham where they've been constructed. The planning department and city and county lawyers have invested their energy and expedited your attention on a text amendment to conform the conservation subdivision ordinance with their faulty application and interpretation that is currently challenged in the courts. You are all too familiar with the disastrous implications of these conservation subdivisions as interpreted by the planning department and approved via administrative decisions. And very little has been conserved. Preserve Rural Durham and others have been testifying throughout 2023 with data-driven and expert-based evidence on damage that will take generations to repair, if at all. But the planning department and legal team have not chosen to spend their time, which residents pay for, to prepare a text amendment to protect residents or our living environments. Instead, they have worked up a fix to protect Durham government, that's you, from lawsuits brought by residents who are simply trying to enforce the ordinance as written. The appeal brought by me and my neighbors is still pending, yet that notwithstanding, I invited dialogue with the planning department to see if we could mutually craft an agreeable text amendment for the obvious common good of trees, clean water, and necessary infrastructure so residents could thrive. My overture was obviously not compelling. The council regularly chides us as speakers that governing is hard. In fact, you all did so tonight. It must be hard, because not only does the city and county electeds and staff fail to correctly interpret this ordinance and fail to achieve its legislative purposes, but as detailed in a letter sent from PRD, Preserve Rural Durham, to all of you last Thursday, addressed to the deputy city manager, the city and county are also not following or enforcing its own requirements for blasting. Numerous violations are documented case by case, and that information is on its way to the Lieutenant Governor, Attorney General, Insurance Commission, and Durham state legislators. And I understand that by the sheriff and police on their scanners indicated that on the 16th of December, there were no police officers available for several minutes or hours. Maybe governing wouldn't be so hard if you imagined yourselves in partnerships with us. There will be nothing to protect in the county as a result of this ordinance approval.
Thank you.
I'm inviting you to say no and blow my mind
Thank you,
by
Ms.
doing
Barefoot.
so.
Thank you so much. All right, this is a public hearing. Are there any others who would like to contribute commentary? Thank you. At this time, I will declare the public hearing closed and back before the council. Colleagues. Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. I wanted to just capture the last statement from Ms. Ross. She was stating something happened with the county, and I didn't catch the last part of that.
Madam Clerk, do we have Ms. Ross available still to clarify her comments at the request of Councilmember Freeman? Ms. Ross?
hello?
Hi, Ms.
This is
Ross.
Katie
Councilmember
Ross.
Freeman would like
Yes.
to hear the clarifying your what you were speaking of before your time ran out. There was
So
you were
what I
finishing
was
your
saying that-
sentence.
Yeah, Okay, so in October, I think it was October 2nd, there was before the commissioners, and that was they had the omnibus bill on the consent agenda, and I believe I'm correct that it was the county commissioners. And I spoke there, as some others did, and I pointed out that this, in a few months, the Court of Appeals would be deciding the current, the meaning of the current statute. And they pulled it out of the consent agenda, and then it went through this. So that's the point. The point is that, and at that point, Ms. Young and the planning department said nothing about the lawsuit. It wasn't about the lawsuit. That's just a new strategy that they came up with later. So my point is, just wait. There's no other lawsuits pending. Mr. Massey is not correct. Is if he's trying to scare you with that, there's nothing else pending. There's the one that Ms. Barefoot is involved in. That will be decided by the Court of Appeals in a few months. They will tell us what is required under the current conservation subdivision, what those purposes, if they are required or not.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ross.
Just wait. Let them do their job.
Thank you.
If you don't like it, you can do your job.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ross.
Thank you. And then I was just going to ask staff specifically how this new conservation subdivision statute would actually prevent the devastation that I have seen in Southeast Central Durham.
Well, hang on.
Good evening, Sarah Young. So I want to clarify, I'm glad you asked that question, Council Member, because I think the issues are getting confused. The destruction of land was addressed through the Tree Preservation and Phased Development Text Amendment. So these changes would not change that. However, those amendments that were already passed would mean that a conservation subdivision built today looks very different than the ones that have been built. So the amendments before you tonight will not change that. The amendments that have already been passed will. Does that help?
Yes.
Thank you.
And then these amendments tonight, and I understand what you're saying, and I want to be very clear that what I heard was that there'll be no additional quadruple or triple density in that area going forward under the guise of conservation subdivision.
So the additional density that a conservation subdivision offers is not changing. That number is remaining the same. What will change is that under the phased development amendments, you will not be able to grade all, you have to keep 50% in conservation and the other 50% you can build on. So unless you have a small enough project where that 50% you could build on is under that phase threshold, you would have to chop up your project into multiple phases.
Okay. And then, and I hear what you're saying. I think what I'm getting at is at this point, with the current text amendments, there wouldn't be conservation subdivisions that move forward.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
If we didn't make this change tonight, you would not be approving conservation subdivisions coming to us.
We would still continue to approve conservation subdivisions even without this change.
Okay. And then I think, I'm sorry, so I think I'm trying to gather, because there's two things, there's two separate things. So I understand you're trying to address the changes so that it makes additional sense. And at the same time, with the lawsuit pending, what I'm not convinced of is that these changes are enough. Does that make sense?
Enough to do what, ma'am?
So when you remove the "and," hold on.
Yes.
And essentially the purpose is laying out why we want to have the conservation subdivision. And you want to remove, I think it was like 4 or 5 of them.
No, Joanne, we just wanted to remove one, the one about streets designed to reduce reliance on main arteries.
Okay. And so the 6.2.4H continued would remain the same?
Yes, ma'am. There's no change to 624H. In fact, the whole reason, in fact, if you go back to 2008, when they put in the language that says, meet the purposes in A, it was while they were doing a comprehensive rewrite of 624. That comprehensive rewrite is what became 624H and was approved about 10, 11 months later. Because 624H are the specific standards that have been applied and that should be applied. They are the specifics of what the property needs to be to qualify as a conservation subdivision.
And so if it qualifies as a conservation subdivision, and to Ms. Young's point, if 50% is what you can build in, does it double count the sensitive, like I'm trying to, if it's already a sensitive area, are we making this, like, are we building a buffer around the sensitive area so that there is conservation, or are we saying that the conservation is the sensitive area?
Good question. I know what you're saying. So there are some things that by state law, we have to allow essentially the double dipping. So state law, general statutes say that stream buffers have to be allowed to count for a variety of land use things, including be calculated in density calculations, count for any required open space, count for any required tree preservation, and count for conservation areas. So there are some limitations. I think that is one of the issues that has been brought up for us to kind of re-examine in the future. Is there a way to maybe just have, a tiered approach or something else based on maybe by zoning district or something that would correlate better to geographies that have more natural features?
So I have a question. Do we date the streams, like the streams, whether they're new or older? How old the streams are? Do we date them?
I don't think that we date them. Our stream determinations are based on a set of fairly old maps from the state. And we are bound by state law to use those maps. I know some people complain that they're out of date, and streams, water moves, and so some streams are not there anymore, some have shifted location. There is the opportunity for people to go to the state Department of Environmental Quality and get a stream determination to figure out if it's gone or different, or if something that they thought was maybe not a stream might actually be a stream.
How would that process talk to these standards?
So whenever there is a stream on site, our ordinance kicks in and says there's a buffer required. We do not require going to DEQ for stream determination is voluntary, right? We cannot require someone to do that, but we apply our buffer standards in the ordinance. More often than not, people will ask to get a stream determination because they go on site and they see that there is no visible feature, and so they're questioning us and the maps.
We get less streams, not more streams determined.
Correct. Okay. Yeah, I can't imagine someone wanting to tell us that they've found a stream that was not mapped.
Gotcha. I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm gonna hold for right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Freeman, Councilmember Rist.
So also for staff, so I'm assuming that this is also something that we're looking at for the UDO rewrite to really address this in a much more comprehensive way, right? Conservation subdivisions.
That's right.
So I also, in reading the comments from the Planning Commission, it sounds like some folks on the Planning Commission are also recommending some text changes before the UDO rewrite to address some of the negative impacts and concerns about the use of this conservation subdivision. So is that something the Planning Department is also thinking about doing now in a more speedy way before the UDO rewrite?
No, we are trying to limit the amount of text amendments that we do. It's challenging for our consultant to have a constant moving target if we keep changing the ordinance as they're trying to evaluate it and rewrite it. But also, we have not yet had projects come through under the new limitations on grading to really see how those are playing out before we start tweaking other parts of the ordinance.
All right. Any other comments? Councilmember Bacon? No, God, I don't know why. I've had dinner. I'm sorry to keep calling you Bacon. I'm so sorry. Councilmember Baker.
Yeah, so this is some of the development, of course, that has been taking place down in southeast Durham and elsewhere on the outskirts of our city has been deeply troubling to me, and something that, you know, I have been jumping up and down and waving my arms and trying to get attention to address through our Unified Development Ordinance and through planning processes. And so I definitely share in the sentiment of using any possible tool to try and obstruct the kind of development that's taking place, that's having the kinds of environmental impacts that we're witnessing. So just a couple questions here. I think the answer to this is no, but would this change have any impact on the current legal proceedings? I'm guessing not.
Potentially. And that's all I'm willing to say on this matter.
Okay, that's interesting. So let's see here. Well, my next question was, is there urgency to this amendment?
Well, the county set it for expedited to go ahead and address the legal vulnerability presented by the current UDO language. As I mentioned, it's an administrative decision. The interpretation by planning staff has been that if a plan meets the specific requirements of 624H, it will be approved. Now, there's only been, I believe, 16 conservation subdivisions in the last 15 years. If another one comes in and the planning director just said they would approve one if it came in and met those requirements, then there would be the risk of further litigation on the exact same claims.
So let me jump in and add one other thing that to clarify my earlier statement. So staff, an administrative review of a site plan, if it meets the standards, we have to approve it legally. We can't not. However, conservation subdivisions inside city jurisdiction, the only way they get approved to get that higher density, they get water and sewer, so they ask to be annexed. So that means you all would see if there was a conservation subdivision that was coming forward in city jurisdiction. So I do want to share that.
Thank you for that. Okay. Just gonna, that's it for me for now.
All right. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I want to thank my colleagues again for some really, I think, incisive observations and comments. First, I want to thank the staff for the work on this that they've done. I do also want to lean in on the point that was made earlier that we've done a number of text amendments that have addressed what we've characterized, or some have characterized as damage to the environment. And a lot of those text amendments were actually informed by our friends at Preserve Rural Durham and others. So some of that stuff has been codified. These particular amendments, and I want to say, from my position, from my point of view, at least very directly, that it is wholly appropriate for a government to act preemptively to protect ourselves from legal action, notwithstanding what the ultimate decision may be. And, you know, each one of us up here, when you say you're the government, yeah, we're the people. Each one of us have been put here by thousands and thousands of people. So we're not acting on it because we can't get sued personally for city action. We represent the city. So to act preemptively to protect us is wholly appropriate. We're not a party to this lawsuit. The county is. So to suggest that we should wait to see what happens, I mean, we could, but we can still do our job in the interim, to preemptively protect ourselves. The other thing is this is an appellate court because they lost in the Superior Court. So we've already had at least some forecasting of what the ultimate decision may be. You never know, obviously, with the courts. That's good luck reading those tea leaves. But I think this is a wholly appropriate step for us to take. If the ultimate decision of the court in some way nullifies what we do here tonight, then so be it. But if it can protect us from actually becoming a party to future action, I don't see why we wouldn't do it. And again, I want to emphasize that the so-called destruction, because if I don't want my neighborhood to change, I would, in the most stark terms, characterize any action that was going to change the nature of my neighborhood as well. But with that being said, I think we've done some good work in terms of text amendments to strengthen what is already considered some of the strongest environmental protections in our state here in Durham. And I think these recommendations by staff, in consultation with legal, I'm sure, are some just prudent steps preemptively. And if they're changed by the appellate court, then so be it. But I fully think this is appropriate for us to do tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Are there any other comments?
Yeah, just a couple other comments here. A little bit more general. I think conservation subdivisions sound like a silver bullet, but they're really not, because they are just parcel by parcel. It's not a broader method of planning that's looking area-wide or city-wide, and so it can be a tool that's used with good planning on the outskirts of the city, but by itself, it can only do so much. So that's something that I think that we need to keep in mind as we move forward with planning on the outskirts of our city. And the other thing is, I do think that there is some urgency behind the need for some amendments to be made to the UDO, some additional amendments to be made to the UDO, and substantive amendments to be made to the UDO prior to the comprehensive rewrite of the UDO. And I think that what we're seeing here is that this is an appropriate place to spend a little bit of time and put a little bit of attention in, just because UDO rewrites, it can take a year and a half, 2 years. It can also take longer. So I think that there are some necessary changes that we should make quickly. So that's something that I will be advocating. Thank you.
For my, I'll be right there. Councilmember Baker, you spoke about them being used in isolation. Are you suggesting that there are, that we deem areas as conservation rather than by project? Just need a little clarification on that.
Sure. So I think, there's an award-winning plan, the Davidson Rural Area Plan, that looks at pretty much everything outside of the municipal limits of Davidson and Mecklenburg County, northeastern portion of Mecklenburg County. And they did a wonderful job of making sure that as they grow outward, they're doing so in a really thoughtful way that's protecting sensitive areas, protecting important view sheds and open space and farmland, while where they are developing, and yes, they are developing intensely in the areas where they're developing, they're doing so in a very sustainable, walkable way with mixes of uses, variety of housing types, but that they're connecting the open spaces together. And they're using, and then that's the plan, they're using the tools within their Unified Development Ordinance, they call it the Planning Ordinance, in order to implement the plan, using tools such as this and other tools within the zoning categories. So that's what I mean.
Thank you. Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. I was just gonna make a general note that we can have the strongest environmental protections, but if they don't work, that's where the issues arise, and that's what we're seeing in Southeast. And I think that I know that this is not going to address it, and I feel that the amendments that we have made are a step towards it, but we have seen how that still has allowed for the same tomato soup to show up in the waterways. And so I think we're moving in the right direction. I don't know that we've gotten the exact makeup of what we need in order to make sure that that area, or those sensitive areas, because when you look at that, just, if you're looking at page 14 on the presentation or the map specifically, you can see how the waterways finger in. And so the protection that you put in place to cover southwest are not in the same way. They're not in the same, well, they're not, it's not our water, and so that it's not as critical and to us as a city. And so I feel like there are layers to what we need to do, and I wanna believe that this is probably the best next step. I don't know that it is where I'm at. Thank you.
All right. For me, Mr. Lawyer, tell me your name so I can be appropriate.
Curtis Massey, sir.
Mr. Massey, Attorney Massey, thank you. So as we are addressing this, just for the folks like me who are trying to follow along here, is this a matter of practice versus technicality and trying to prevent as much exposure as possible legally?
No, sir, what I would say is, and just to be clear, I acknowledge that the plaintiffs are correct when they say that the ordinance as written says you're supposed to meet all 12 of those purposes. But I'm saying functionally, it can't be done. And you need to conform the ordinance to what has been the longstanding practice and interpretation of the planning staff, and legitimize and legalize the way they're doing business. And not because it's preferable or allows more or different things, but because it allows the application of the true standards and specifications for conservation subdivisions in 624H. Not that it's about practice over some technicality, it's about making sure the ordinance is functional and accurate. And what you have right now is not functional nor accurate. And I understand that, you know, having gone back and read the minutes from '08, they were trying to do something as an interim measure while they were writing 624H, and they didn't do a very good job, to be honest. But at a minimum, when they got 624H, which was what they were going for, they should have cleaned up that language in 624B.
Thank you, that does clarify. I think I may use words that may not fit well into the puzzle piece, but what you said answered my question, and my interpretation is that is in order to be able to, you know, objectively practice, you know, with this ordinance, and we are making some technical changes here that allows us to allow the language to reflect what is happening. And that is my understanding. And based on when I was initially reading it, I was like, so how, I'm glad I'm not a developer or anybody building, because it's going to be hard to meet all 12 of those, which it would discourage me to actually want to build conservation subdivisions. So thanks for the clarity. All right, we have a question. Councilmember Baker.
Just one other question, because that "and" there, and you're sort of saying that because that "and" is there, that therefore you have to meet all of the different statements.
Well, that's the plaintiff's contention, and I'll accept it.
Okay. And because when I read it, I don't read it that way. It would be all the applicable.
You know, and that's the way I believe planning staff has interpreted it. Over the last, 16 years, there's been 15 conservation subdivisions. None of them met all 12. Nobody had considered that "and" to require all 12 be met until the current litigation.
Would we consider changing the language instead to say all of the following as applicable?
You know, you go down that road, remember, they're vague. Oh, I'm sorry, I will yield. No, okay, I'll finish up, and then she'll clean up. Remember what I said at the beginning. The purposes listed in 624A are vague statements. They are explained in detail in 624H. And as I showed you in that map, many of them do not occur in Durham, certainly not together. So how do you get into as applicable? Because now it's getting into a lot of interpretation. And just like half of them are promote or encourage. And how do you measure that? It's supposed to be about objective criteria. 624H are objective criteria. You have to have 80% of the 50% be a primary conservation subdivision. And if we go back to that slide, you'll see, or those two slides, because primary conservation areas are two slides there, setting forth in great detail, slopes 25% or better, 5,000 square feet. Woodlands, an acre or more, 50% of the trees being hardwoods, 10-inch diameter at breast height. Wetlands being under the jurisdiction of the Army Corps or DEQ. Scenic views in purpose have to be designated scenic byways by your federal or state authority. Trying to pull more in from A isn't adding value, it's adding confusion with loose standards. And the only argument for doing it is trying to prevent conservation subdivisions from being approved or to foster litigation over these vague standards and whether or not they're being met. And for planning to be able to do these as an administrative decision, you need clear standards, measurable objectives. And quite honestly, 624A, the purpose statement, are not clear objective standards.
So one other thing that I'll add as a bit of clarification, I have heard critics of conservation subdivisions say that their read is that if you have any of these features on your site, you should be made to keep them all. And that's also not consistent with H and how it works. You get 50% of your land to be developed. As we move further into areas of Durham that have a lot more natural features on site, you're going to have some sites that, you know, if you kept everything on the site that qualified as one of those things, you would have no site left to develop, let alone the 50% that the ordinance entitles you to. So I think that's another clarification that I want to make, that right now, you know, the ordinance is structured at 50-50. Now, in some future, should that change? Should it be 60-40 or something else? That's a conversation we can definitely have. But that's another reason why staff kind of rejects the argument that if you have it on your site, you need to keep it, because that doesn't actually jive with the regulations in terms of percentages.
All right. Well, you have a comment? Councilmember Freeman?
Just a question. Just when you're saying the clear and objective standards, if it were to say increase, that's not clear enough?
Increase.
Rather than promote, to increase?
Okay, let's look, what standard are you talking about? And when you say increase, by what amount?
Okay, so you have to.
I mean, because
So
certainly it's like.
And I think that's where I'm going with.
Increase it by 1%, is that going to be enough? Or are you going to say, well, that's not really what we're going for?
Yeah, and I think that's where I'm going specifically, and just acknowledging that I think the purposes, and I get why in 2008 it was structured the way that it was, based on the history of development here in Durham. And if there was a way to be more specific in a way that actually protected specific areas of land, and I know that that would have to be pre-identified, especially around Falls Lake specifically. I think that that would be more, for me, it would be more beneficial.
And if talking about changing things at Falls Lake is a very different conversation. I'll say that if there are purposes you want to be enhanced and the standards raised, I think you're really talking about amending 624H.
Okay.
That defines what goes into a conservation subdivision, what qualifies to be included in a primary conservation area. And that's where you keep up those standards.
But I wouldn't want to, what I'm saying is yes, and I'm not trying to not build in areas. I'm trying to figure out how to, like, environmentally friendly build in those areas. And so the purposes would still need to be, like, there would need to be enough objectivity. Like you say, I hear you when you say it leaves us open to litigation, but that object or that subjectivity allows for other areas that aren't near Falls Lake or it just creates some flexibility where we can actually, so we can make it as tight as possible and still allow some flexibility where it's not necessary.
And I think I was just going to say that, ma'am, if you've got specific concerns about Falls Lake or conservation subdivisions and enhancing those standards, that's where I've heard the planning director say on more than one occasion, not necessarily here tonight, but in other meetings and talking with Preserve Rural Durham, you know, open to modifying this language. And if there are other areas that may, because of watershed protections, need to be enhanced, that's something to address. But this really isn't the vehicle for it. I mean, because really, for all the talk about the bad things in Southeast Durham that are being done on conservation subdivisions, 624 doesn't define the construction standards. As Director Young mentioned, y'all have done other things with phase grading and tree preservation that are rolling out. And I had the tour of Southeast Durham Friday before last. And I will tell you, years ago, I used to represent S&E, sedimentation erosion control, and pursuing enforcement actions for developers who were not complying with those permits. There are things to be done, but trying to keep 624A, the purpose statement, as something meaningful and required, I don't think it's going to be functional, ma'am.
Thank you. And just to clarify, we are looking at objectivity within wording rather than what the actual content that, like, we're not, to be clear, what defines the standard? It's not what we're addressing. We're talking about how it's worded to.
Well, but to clarify that the standards applicable are those in 624H.
Right, gotcha. Okay. All right, good. All right. Are there any other comments? And Ms. Young, Director Young.
Yeah, I just wanted to share one bit from one of the action items in the comprehensive plan is to develop an inventory of priority conservation land and implement regulatory changes to protect these areas from development. That is one of the items that we as staff are looking to prioritize in this upcoming, I'm just going to kind of put it out there, in this upcoming work program. So that would be the appropriate place to look at some bigger changes, not this text amendment, as our council has said.
Thank you for that. All right. No more comments? I'll now, you have a comment? Okay, good. All right. I'll entertain. We've closed this and brought it back, and we've discussed it as a council, and now I will entertain a motion to adopt an ordinance amending the Unified Development Ordinance, incorporating revisions to Article 6, District Intensity Statements.
Move is read.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Madam Clerk, you can open the vote, please. You can close the vote.
And the motion passes 5-1, with Councilmember Freeman voting no.
Thank you so much. And motion number 2, to adopt a consistency statement as required by NCGS 160D-605.
So moved.
Second.
So we're moved and properly seconded. If we could please open the vote. You can please close the vote.
And the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you so much. And we will now go back to the items that were pulled at the beginning of the meeting. And I will make a note here that, okay, yeah, then we'll do number 6. All right. So number 5 was pulled, fiscal year 2024-2025 budget development schedule. And this item was pulled by Ms. Stella Adams. Ms. Adams, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Oh, don't mess up on me now. Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and the members of the City Council, I rise tonight to raise my concerns about the proposed budget schedule. As a citizen, I will have little opportunity to impact the budget once the council budget retreat is concluded. City council members will give staff their budget priorities, and the staff will go and craft the budget. By the time the first public hearing is held on March 18, 2024, the die will be cast, the concrete poured, and the public will have little chance to make significant changes to the budget. Since council priorities are due on January 12, 2024, I ask the council members to increase funding for affordable housing, prioritizing the increase in the number of affordable units available throughout the city, and to provide a permanent increase in wages for our city workers. I want to go on the record, Mr. Mayor, and especially for you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, that I am willing to support a half-penny increase in my taxes to support the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and an additional penny increase to support a permanent increase of city worker pay. And you can use that extra half-penny to support other city priorities like the HEART program. On the record, I am willing to support a 2-cent tax increase to make sure we continue to provide we continue to have our city recognized as a world-class destination. In its place, it is a place to call home for long-term residents and newcomers alike. In Romans chapter 4, verse 4, it is written, "Now to the one who works, wages are not credited as a gift, but as an obligation." Members of the City County Council, it is our obligation to provide city workers with their long overdue step increases and establish a $25 minimum hour wage for all city employees. It is, in fact, a sin before God if we fail to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Ms. Adams, for your comments. At this time, at this time, there's no, okay, gotcha. At this time, I will entertain a motion to adopt the fiscal year 2024-2025 budget development schedule.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Madam Clerk, please open the vote. Please close the vote.
The motion passes 6-0.
Thank you so much. And we will now move to number 6. I will say, colleagues, that this item was pulled mistakenly. However, we do still need to take action. It was no contention for this item. It was just a misunderstanding. And the person who pulled it disclosed that, and then they left the chambers. I let them know that we would, Ms. Dozier know that we would address it. So Item 6 is here. If there are no commentary, there is. Okay, Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. I would just say that I think it's a long time coming, and I really appreciate the opportunity for community-based organizations to do some engagement work around Fayetteville Street, and I think it's long overdue, and it's going to be really good. So I'm glad that we had the ARPA dollars to support that. Thank you.
I agree, and they do really good work, so thank you all. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to authorize the city manager to execute an ARPA subrecipient grant agreement with Be Connected Durham and Beyond in an amount not to exceed $350,000.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. This time, Madam Clerk, please open the vote. Please close.
The motion passes 6-0.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk and colleagues. All right, at this time, we'll right. All right. At this time, there is no other business for the council. I will say, just for clarification to the public, we did approve in the budget a pay study, and that will help inform the appropriate wages comparative to other markets, and we will have that information to make a decision regarding wages and many other things. And to some of the comments earlier, we have no idea how many pennies or cents we have to raise taxes this year, if we have to at all. But that is why we have to maneuver multiple levers in this city to not have too much weight in one area. But there will be a pay study executed this year, and we look forward to having that data back. All right, at this time, there's no more.
Before you.
Madam Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. I just wanted to be on the record and stating very plainly, I think it's really a concern to monitor or police folks' public comments, and I want us to be a little bit pulled back on that, because I think it could be a slippery slope. Just noting, like, this is the people's house, and we want to make sure it stays the people's house, and we don't want to have any need for extra outside of the council.
Thank you.
Stuff. So just mindful that I know what you were trying to do tonight was very specific, and I think you handled it very well. But just as a note, mindful that we're not policing folks' public comments.
Absolutely, absolutely. I really appreciate that advice. I grew about 6 or 7 gray hairs. I got here this morning at 7:15, and I've been here ever since, thinking about how tonight was going to go. And my number one priority is to make sure we do give voice and also keep order respectfully for everyone. So just want to I appreciate those comments. All right, there's no more business, everyone. It is now 10:51, and we are adjourning this meeting. As Mayor O'Neill would say, Bull City strong. Thank you. We're adjourned.
How you feeling? I didn't want to raise them. I didn't want to raise them to 7 cents. If you go back and the county raised taxes. If we had done what we would have had to raise your tax too. But we would have had to
I'm saying, I'm not even, I'm going to, but
you said 2 cents.
I said 2 cents tonight because my
So that's your limit. We don't know. We do, that's the point. We don't know how much we have to raise.
There's 2 issues. His pace doesn't have anything to do with putting people in your proper steps. You had that built in to prior budgets.
Now,
You are the cheapest to determine
people are being hired, they're hiring wages, and people are.
The step plan is not a contract. It's, we pass a budget one time. Yeah, we cannot, well, then hear me out. Well, if you understand that, then you understand what we're saying. We cannot obligate future council to a budget. Got you. So when they say we owe them the steps were never contractual. The steps were a desire on our part each year, but each new council has to approve the budget discreetly in that year. You can't obligate the steps. So to use the word we owe them steps is not appropriate.
Okay, here's my thing. You passed a livable wage rate of $17. But you didn't bring all the employees. It's almost who were below that.
12 hours? That's you could have, I work here, trust me, we did. In the part-time employees, part of the reason why we did that is because our part-time employees weren't getting it. They now get it. So that's across the board in the city of Durham.
How do you have firefighters who are making $15 an hour? How does that happen?